When Maya Hart accidentally sent her ultrasound photo to a stranger's number, she expected an apology text, maybe an awkward laugh. Instead, she got a reply that made her blood freeze. "Congratulations. Does Ethan know?" The stranger knew her boyfriend's name. He knew Ethan had disappeared 3 weeks ago, and within 90 seconds, he knew Maya's address, her workplace, and exactly how many steps it took to reach her apartment door. Because Ethan hadn't just vanished, he'd stolen $2 million from one of New York's most dangerous men. And now Maya, 8 weeks pregnant and completely alone, had just become the only leverage left. Seb, before we dive into Maya's story, if you're enjoying this tale of danger, deception, and impossible choices, smash that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let's begin. The rain came down in sheets that late September evening, turning Manhattan into a blur of neon and brake lights. Maya Hart stood beneath the narrow awning of the women's clinic on East 86th Street, clutching a manila envelope against her chest like a shield. Inside was a single piece of thermal paper, an ultrasound image showing a tiny flutter of white against the grainy black void. 8 weeks. The technician had smiled when she said it, as if those 2 words were supposed to mean something beautiful. Maya felt nothing but terror. She stepped out from under the awning, letting the rain soak through her thin jacket. The cold shocked her system, but it felt appropriate. Everything about this moment felt wrong. The empty sidewalk, the distant wail of sirens, the way her phone sat heavy in her pocket, filled with 3 weeks of unanswered texts to a man who had simply ceased to exist. Ethan Cross, her boyfriend of 2 years. The man who'd kissed her forehead every morning before work, who'd talked about moving to Brooklyn someday when they could afford something bigger than her studio apartment. The man who'd walked out to grab coffee one Thursday morning and never came back. No note, no explanation, just gone. Maya had filed a missing person report on day 4. The detective assigned to her case, a tired-looking woman named Ramirez, had asked all the expected questions. Any recent arguments? Financial troubles? History of mental illness or substance abuse? Maya had answered no to everything, watching Ramirez's interest fade with each response. "Young men disappeared in New York all the time," the detective explained gently. "Most of them came back. Some of them didn't want to be found. That had been 19 days ago." Now Maya stood in the rain, one hand pressed against her still flat stomach, and realized she couldn't wait anymore. She needed to tell someone. She needed to hear another human voice acknowledge that this was real, that she wasn't imagining the nausea that woke her every morning or the exhaustion that made every simple task feel like climbing a mountain. She pulled out her phone, water droplets scattering across the cracked screen protector she kept meaning to replace. Her best friend Jenna would know what to say. Jenna always knew what to say. Maya navigated to her messages, found Jenna's thread, and carefully positioned her phone to photograph the ultrasound image she'd pulled from the envelope. The photo came out blurry, too dark, the overhead streetlight creating a glare across the thermal paper. She tried again, tilting the envelope, and managed to capture something clearer. The small white shape was visible now, curved like a cashew, impossibly fragile. Maya typed quickly, her cold fingers fumbling. "I need to talk. Can you call me?" She attached the photo and hit send before she could second-guess herself. The message showed as delivered immediately. Maya exhaled, watching her breath mist in the cold air. She started walking toward the subway station 3 blocks away, phone in hand, waiting for the 3 dots that would signal Jenna typing back. Her phone buzzed, but it wasn't Jenna's name that appeared on the screen. "Unknown number. Congratulations. Does Ethan know?" Maya stopped walking so abruptly that a man behind her nearly collided with her shoulder. She stood frozen in the middle of the sidewalk, rain streaming down her face, staring at the message. Her hands started shaking. She looked at her sent messages, the ultrasound photo. She'd sent it to the wrong number. She must have mistyped, selected the wrong contact somehow. Her mind raced through explanations even as a colder, more primitive part of her brain screamed that something was very wrong. Wrong numbers didn't reply with her boyfriend's name. She typed back with trembling fingers. "Who is this? How do you know Ethan?" The 3 dots appeared instantly, as if the person on the other end had been waiting for her response. Unknown number. "I know a lot of things, Maya Hart. I know you live at 412 West 47th Street, apartment 3B. I know you work at Morrison and Associates as a junior paralegal. I know you take the C train to work every morning at 7:45. And I know Ethan Cross hasn't contacted you in exactly 22 days. Maya's vision swam. The rain, the streetlights, the passing cars, everything blurred together into streaks of color. She felt her knees weaken and grabbed onto a parking meter to steady herself. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Maya, please tell me where Ethan is. I just need to know if he's okay. Unknown. Number. Ethan made some very poor choices. He took something that didn't belong to him. $2 million and a flash drive containing information worth considerably more. Did he tell you about that before he ran? The world tilted. Maya couldn't breathe. $2 million. Ethan, the man who'd complained about spending $40 on concert tickets, who'd always split restaurant bills down to the penny because his graphic design freelancing barely covered rent. Maya, you're lying. Ethan wouldn't, unknown number. Wouldn't steal, wouldn't run, wouldn't leave you pregnant and alone? Yet here we are. I'm sending a car to your location. It will arrive in 4 minutes. The driver's name is Marcus. He'll be in a black Escalade. I strongly suggest you get in. Maya, no, I'm calling the police. Unknown. Number. Call them. Tell them Maya Hart is being threatened by an unknown number. They'll file a report, possibly send a patrol car to your apartment in a few hours. Meanwhile, Ethan's Russian business associates are currently 20 minutes from your address. They're less patient than I am, and they have no interest in conversation. Maya, Russians? What are you talking about? Unknown. Number. Ethan didn't just steal from me, Maya. He stole from people who view pregnant girlfriends as unfortunate collateral. The Escalade is 3 minutes away. I can protect you. They cannot. Maya looked up and down the rain-soaked street, suddenly aware of every shadow, every parked car, every person walking past with their head down against the weather. Her apartment was 15 minutes away by subway. She could run. She could hide. But the stranger knew her address. He knew her routine. He knew about the baby. Headlights appeared at the end of the block, a large black SUV moving slowly through the rain. Maya watched it approach, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. The vehicle pulled up to the curb directly in front of her, and the rear window rolled down 6 inches. A man's voice, calm and professional. Ms. Hart, please get in. We're here to help. Maya stood paralyzed on the sidewalk, rain plastering her hair to her face. Every instinct screamed at her to run. But run where? To her apartment that this stranger already knew about? To Jenna's place in Queens, putting her best friend in danger? To a police station where she'd have to explain that her missing boyfriend had apparently stolen millions from criminals? Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. 4 cars just turned onto Amsterdam Avenue from West 89th. They're not mine. Get in the Escalade now, Maya. Please. The word please shouldn't have mattered, but somehow it did. It was the first thing the stranger had said that sounded remotely human. Maya made a decision born of pure terror and the sudden, overwhelming need to protect the tiny life growing inside her. She yanked open the Escalade's door and threw herself into the back seat. The door had barely closed before the vehicle surged forward, tires hissing on wet asphalt. 2 men sat in the front, the driver and a passenger who turned to look at her. Both wore dark suits. Both had the kind of stillness that suggested violence was merely a job requirement, not a personality trait. Seatbelt, please, the passenger said. His voice was gentle, almost apologetic. Maya fumbled with the belt, her hands shaking so badly she could barely click it into place. Through the rear window, she watched 4 black sedans appear on the street behind them, moving fast. The Escalade accelerated, taking a hard right onto a side street. Who are you people? Maya's voice came out as a whisper. We work for someone who has a vested interest in keeping you alive, the passenger said. He had a faint accent, Italian, maybe. Right now, that makes us the closest thing you have to friends. The Escalade wove through side streets with practiced efficiency, the driver never speeding enough to attract attention, but never slow enough to let the pursuing vehicles catch up. Maya watched the city blur past. Her city, the street she'd walked for 3 years, suddenly transformed into hostile territory. Where are you taking me? Somewhere safe. Somewhere the Volkov family can't reach you. The who? The passenger turned to face her fully. He had dark eyes and a scar running along his jawline, barely visible in the dim light. The people Ethan stole from weren't just any criminals, Ms. Hart. He took money from Konstantin Volkov's organization. They've been looking for him since the day he vanished. When they couldn't find him, the man gestured vaguely at Maya. They started looking for leverage. Maya felt bile rise in her throat. I don't know anything. I don't know where he is or what he did. I'm nobody. You're carrying his child. That makes you somebody. The Escalade merged onto the FDR drive, heading south. Rain hammered the windshield. Maya pulled out her phone with shaking hands and tried to call Jenna. The call wouldn't connect. No signal. We're jamming communications, the passenger explained, noticing her confusion. Standard security protocol. I apologize for the inconvenience. You're kidnapping me. We're protecting you. There's a difference. Then let me go. The passenger's expression softened slightly. Ms. Hart, 4 hours ago, Konstantin Volkov put a price on any information leading to Ethan Cross or known associates. You became a target the moment that order went out. If you go home, you'll be dead or disappeared by morning. If you go to the police, the Volkovs will find you before your statement is even typed up. Your only chance at surviving this is to accept protection from someone powerful enough to make Volkov think twice. And who is that? Your boss? You'll meet him soon enough. They drove in silence for nearly an hour. The city gave way to industrial areas, then to the airport access roads. Maya's exhausted mind registered the transition with dull inevitability. Of course they were leaving the city. Of course this nightmare was going to get worse before it got better. The Escalade pulled into a private aviation terminal, the kind Maya had only seen in movies, all glass and steel and implied wealth. They drove directly onto the tarmac, where a helicopter sat waiting, rotors already spinning slowly. No, Maya said, pressing herself back against the seat. No, I'm not getting on that thing. The passenger opened his door and turned to face her with something that might have been sympathy. Ms. Hart, I understand you're frightened, but we're out of options. The Volkovs have people everywhere, airports, train stations, every major highway out of the city. A helicopter is the only way to move you without leaving a trail. Move me where? To someone who can offer you real protection. Someone who has resources the Volkovs respect. Maya looked at the helicopter, then at the terminal building behind them, then at the two men who'd driven her here with such calm efficiency. She thought about her apartment, her job, her ordinary life that had somehow transformed into a crime thriller overnight. She thought about the tiny life inside her that hadn't asked for any of this. If I get on that helicopter, she said slowly, do I ever get to come back? The passenger held her gaze. That depends on a lot of things, Ms. Hart, but I can promise you this. If you don't get on it, you definitely won't be coming back. Not alive. Maya unbuckled her seatbelt. The rain had followed them to the airport, turning the tarmac into a field of dark mirrors reflecting the terminal lights. Maya ran toward the helicopter with her jacket pulled over her head, guided by the passenger whose name she still didn't know. Someone helped her into the cabin. A pilot, she assumed, though she couldn't see faces through the rain and the disorientation. The doors sealed shut. The rotors accelerated, and then they were lifting off, the ground falling away beneath them. The city she'd called home for 3 years shrinking into a constellation of lights against the darkness. Maya closed her eyes and tried to remember the last normal moment she'd had. Yesterday morning, maybe. Waking up in her own bed, brushing her teeth with the toothbrush Ethan had left behind, getting dressed for a job she'd probably just lost by disappearing without notice. Such a small, ordinary life. She hadn't realized how desperately she'd wanted it until it was gone. The flight took 40 minutes. Maya spent it in silence, staring out the window at the black expanse of the Atlantic Ocean below. They followed the coastline north, leaving the glow of New York behind. Eventually, lights appeared again. A massive estate perched on a cliff overlooking the water. The helicopter descended toward a landing pad illuminated by ground lights. When they touched down, Maya's legs barely held her weight. Exhaustion, fear, and the first trimester nausea that had plagued her for weeks all combined into a dizzy wave that made her stumble. The passenger caught her elbow, steadying her. "Easy," he said. "We're almost there." Almost where? But she could already see the answer. A sprawling mansion dominated the clifftop, all stone and glass and architectural angles that suggested both beauty and fortress-like security. Floodlights illuminated manicured gardens. Armed men stood at regular intervals along the perimeter. This wasn't protection. This was a prison with expensive landscaping. They walked across the landing pad toward the main house, the passenger keeping a firm but not rough grip on Maya's arm. Another suited man opened the front door as they approached, stepping aside without a word. They entered a foyer that belonged in a museum. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that Maya recognized from college art history classes. "This way," the passenger said, guiding her down a hallway lined with more paintings. They stopped at a set of double doors. The passenger knocked once, then opened them without waiting for a response. The office beyond was exactly what Maya would have expected from a crime lord's mansion: dark wood paneling, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a desk the size of her apartment's kitchen. But the man standing by the window looking out at the storm-tossed ocean wasn't what she expected at all. He was young, mid-30s at most, with dark hair and sharp features that suggested Italian ancestry. He wore an expensive suit without a tie, the kind of casual elegance that spoke of old money and absolute confidence. When he turned to face her, his eyes were the color of slate, cold, analytical, and completely unreadable. "Ms. Hart," he said, and his voice carried the same faint accent as the man who'd driven her here. "Thank you for coming. I apologize for the dramatic circumstances of our meeting." Maya found her voice through the fear. "You didn't give me much choice." "No," he agreed calmly. "I didn't. Please, sit." He gestured to a chair facing his desk. Maya wanted to refuse, wanted to demand answers, wanted to scream at this stranger who'd torn her life apart in the space of an hour. But her legs were shaking and her head was spinning and the chair looked extremely inviting. She sat. The man moved to his desk and settled into his own chair with the kind of practiced ease that suggested he'd conducted 1,000 such conversations. He folded his hands on the desk surface and studied her with those unreadable eyes. "My name is Valentino Castelli," he said. "Though most people call me Teo, I run an organization that handles various business interests along the Eastern Seaboard. Ethan Cross worked for me briefly in a consulting capacity, graphic design for legitimate business fronts. He was talented. He was also stupid." "Where is he?" Maya demanded. "If you're so powerful, you must know where he is." "I don't," Teo said simply. "If I did, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But I know what he took. I know who he sold it to, and I know that he's currently the most hunted man on the East Coast. The Volkovs want him dead. I want my property back. Which brings us to you. I told your people. I don't know anything. I believe you. Ethan was many things, but he wasn't reckless enough to tell his civilian girlfriend that he'd stolen $2 million in cash and a flash drive containing compromising information on 3 different crime families. No, he kept you ignorant to keep you safe. Unfortunately, it didn't work." Maya wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the room's comfortable temperature. "What do you want from me?" Teo leaned back in his chair, still watching her with that analytical gaze. "For now, nothing. You're here because the Volkovs were planning to grab you tonight and use you to draw Ethan out. I couldn't allow that. It would have been messy, and civilian casualties are bad for business." "How generous." "I'm not a generous man, Ms. Hart. I'm a pragmatic one. You represent an asset, leverage against Ethan if he resurfaces, and a complication for my competitors. Keeping you here serves my interests. So I'm a prisoner. You're a guest under protective custody. There's a difference." "Not from where I'm sitting." Teo's expression shifted slightly. Not quite a smile, but something that suggested he appreciated her defiance. "You're exhausted, you're frightened, and you're pregnant. I'm going to have someone show you to a room where you can rest. Tomorrow, when you're thinking more clearly, we'll discuss your situation in detail. For tonight, please understand that you are safer here than anywhere else in the world." Maya wanted to argue. She wanted to rage against the injustice of being dragged into someone else's crime, But the exhaustion was crushing, and the small life inside her needed rest even if she didn't. "What if I try to leave?" she asked quietly. "You won't make it past the gate," Teo said. "Not a threat, just a statement of fact. But you're welcome to try if it makes you feel better. I'll instruct my security team not to use excessive force." A knock at the door interrupted before Maya could respond. A woman entered, middle-aged, with kind eyes and gray-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore simple clothes and had the competent, no-nonsense air of someone who'd spent years managing complicated households. "Ms. Hart, this is Rosa," Teo said. "She manages the house. She'll show you to your room and get you anything you need." Rosa offered a gentle smile. "Come, dear, you look ready to collapse. Let's get you somewhere comfortable." Maya stood on shaking legs and followed Rosa from the office without another word to Teo. She could feel his eyes on her back as she left, could sense the weight of calculation behind that steady gaze. Rosa led her up a grand staircase to the second floor, down another hallway, and finally to a bedroom that was larger than Maya's entire apartment. The space was decorated in soft neutrals, cream walls, pale wood furniture, a massive bed covered in what looked like Egyptian cotton linens. "The bathroom is through there," Rosa said, pointing to an adjoining door. "I'll have some clothes brought up for you. What size do you wear?" I don't know. 6? 8? I haven't exactly been clothes shopping lately." Rosa's expression softened. "I'll bring options. Are you hungry?" Maya shook her head. The thought of food made her nauseous. "You should eat something. For the baby." Rosa's tone was gentle but firm. "I'll bring soup, something light." Before Maya could protest, Rosa disappeared, leaving her alone in the enormous bedroom. Maya walked to the window and looked out at the storm. The ocean crashed against the cliffs below, white foam visible even in the darkness. Somewhere out there was New York, her apartment, her life. It felt a million miles away. She pulled out her phone, still no signal. The stranger, Teo, had probably ensured that. She couldn't call for help even if she knew who to call. Maya sank onto the edge of the bed and finally let herself cry. Not dramatic sobs, just quiet tears that leaked down her face while she pressed both hands against her stomach. 8 weeks. A tiny flutter of life that depended entirely on her to survive, and she'd just traded one uncertain future for another, equally terrifying one. A soft knock announced Rosa's return. She carried a tray with a bowl of soup that smelled like chicken and vegetables, along with crackers and a glass of water. "Eat what you can," Rosa said, setting the tray on the bedside table. "The nausea will pass. I had it terrible with both my boys. First trimester's the worst." Maya looked up, surprised. "You have children?" "2. Both grown now, both stubborn as hell." Rosa smiled. "You'll be a good mother, I think. You have strength, I can see it." "I don't feel strong. Strong people rarely do. Now eat. I'll be down the hall if you need anything. Don't be afraid to call." After Rosa left, Maya forced herself to eat half the soup. It stayed down, which felt like a small victory. She found pajamas laid out in the bathroom, soft cotton, still tagged, exactly her size. Rosa must have kept a whole wardrobe on hand for unexpected female guests. Maya didn't want to think about why a crime lord's estate would need that particular resource. She showered, changed, and crawled into the bed. The sheets were as soft as they looked. The mattress was perfect. Everything about the room was designed for comfort, which somehow made it feel more like a cage. Maya lay in the darkness, listening to the storm, and tried to make sense of the last few hours. Ethan had stolen from criminals. Multiple crime families. $2 million. A flash drive. And he'd left her behind to face the consequences. The man she'd loved, or thought she'd loved, had vanished without a word, knowing exactly what danger he was leaving her in. He'd made his choices. Now Maya had to make hers. She pressed her hand against her stomach again, feeling nothing yet, but knowing the life was there. Growing, depending on her. "I'll keep you safe," she whispered to the darkness. "Whatever it takes. I promise." The storm raged outside. Inside, in a mansion belonging to a man who dealt in violence and money and power, Maya Hart closed her eyes and tried to believe that somehow, impossibly, everything would be okay. She was asleep within minutes, too exhausted for nightmares. But tomorrow would bring new questions, new dangers. and a conversation with Valentino Castelli that would determine whether she was truly a guest in this gilded prison or something much worse. Maya woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the disorienting certainty that something was terribly wrong. For 3 confused seconds, she thought she was in a hotel, maybe on vacation, maybe at a conference. Then memory crashed back like cold water. The ultrasound, the stranger's texts, the helicopter ride, Teo Castelli's slate-gray eyes watching her across that enormous desk. She sat up too quickly, and nausea rolled through her. Morning sickness, her exhausted brain supplied. Right on schedule. She stumbled to the bathroom and lost what little remained of Rosa's soup from the night before, then sat on the cool marble floor with her forehead pressed against her knees, waiting for the world to stop spinning. When she finally felt steady enough to stand, she found her reflection in the mirror and barely recognized herself. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her hair was a tangled mess. She looked exactly like what she was. A woman who'd been kidnapped by criminals and spent the night in a mansion on a cliff, wondering if she'd ever see her real life again. A soft knock interrupted her spiral. Rosa's voice came through the door. "Ms. Hart, I have breakfast if you're feeling up to it." Maya pulled on the robe she found hanging behind the bathroom door, silk, of course, probably worth more than her entire wardrobe, and opened the bedroom door. Rosa stood in the hallway with another tray, this one laden with toast, fruit, and what looked like ginger tea. "I thought you might be sick," Rosa said gently. "The tea helps. My grandmother's recipe." "Thank you." Maya took the tray, surprised by the kindness. She'd expected prison food delivered by silent guards, not a motherly housekeeper who remembered morning sickness remedies. "Mr. Castelli would like to see you at 10, Rosa continued. "I've laid out some clothes in the closet. Take your time." "The house is secure. You're safe here." Safe. The word felt absurd. Maya was a prisoner in a crime lord's mansion, pregnant with a missing man's baby, wanted by Russian criminals for leverage. Nothing about this situation was safe. But she nodded anyway, because what else could she do? Rosa left, and Maya forced herself to eat half a slice of toast and drink all the tea. Her stomach settled slightly. Small victories. The closet Rosa had mentioned turned out to be a walk-in the size of Maya's old bedroom, stocked with women's clothing in various sizes, all still tagged. Jeans, sweaters, dresses, casual clothes, and formal wear mixed together like a boutique warehouse. Maya chose the simplest option she could find, dark jeans that actually fit, a cream sweater, comfortable flats. She braided her damp hair and stared at herself in the mirror again. "You can do this," she told her reflection. "You survived yesterday. You can survive today." At exactly 10 o'clock, a quiet knock announced the arrival of the same man who'd sat in the Escalade's passenger seat. In daylight, without rain and terror clouding her perception, Maya could see him more clearly. Late 40s, the scar on his jaw more prominent, eyes that had seen too much. "Miss Hart, I'm Marcus. We weren't properly introduced last night. Mr. Castelli is waiting in his office." Marcus. The driver's name is Marcus, the text had said. So this was the man who'd convinced her to get in the vehicle that changed everything. "Do I have a choice about going?" Maya asked. "You always have choices, but some are smarter than others." They walked through the mansion in silence. Morning light revealed details Maya had missed in last night's fear-blurred state. Artwork that belonged in museums, furniture that whispered old money, windows that offered stunning views of the Atlantic Ocean crashing against the rocks below. The house was beautiful. It was also unmistakably a fortress, with sightlines and security cameras positioned at every angle. Marcus knocked on the office doors and opened them without waiting for a response. Teo stood by the same window, wearing different clothes but radiating the same controlled power. He turned as Maya entered, and something flickered in his expression. Assessment, perhaps, or calculation. "Ms. Hart, I trust you slept well." "As well as anyone could after being kidnapped." Teo's mouth curved slightly. Not quite a smile, but acknowledgement of her point. "Please sit. We have much to discuss." Marcus closed the doors and took up a position beside them. Not threatening, but present. A reminder that Maya wasn't having a casual conversation with a friend. She sat in the same chair as last night, and Teo settled behind his desk with that infuriatingly calm demeanor. "Let's begin with honesty," Teo said. You want to know where Ethan is. You want to understand what he did and why. You want to know if you're in danger and what happens next. Am I correct? Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. I'll answer what I can. 6 weeks ago, Ethan completed a graphic design project for one of my legitimate businesses, a restaurant group. He did good work. I paid him well. But Ethan had access to my offices during that time, and he used that access to steal a considerable amount of cash from a safe he shouldn't have known existed, along with a flash drive containing financial records and communications that could implicate several organizations and activities the FBI would find very interesting. Ethan wouldn't, Maya started, but Teo raised a hand. Wouldn't steal? He did. I have security footage. He knew exactly what he was doing and exactly how much trouble it would cause. What I don't know is why he thought he could get away with it, or where he planned to go. Maya felt something crumble inside her chest. The Ethan she knew wouldn't have risked something so monumentally stupid, but the Ethan she knew also wouldn't have abandoned her pregnant and alone. Maybe she'd never known him at all. The Russians you mentioned last night, she said quietly. The Volkovs. How are they involved? The flash drive contained information about transactions between my organization and theirs. Ethan sold copies to their competitors. The Volkovs believe I was careless with security, which makes me look weak. They want Ethan dead as an example. They want their reputation intact, and they want anyone associated with him to understand what happens when you damage Volkov interests. I didn't damage anything. I didn't even know. I know. But they don't care. You're Ethan's girlfriend. You're carrying his child. In their world, that makes you complicit. Maya wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the room's warmth. So what happens to me? Do you just keep me here forever, until Ethan surfaces? What if he never does? Teo leaned back in his chair, studying her with those analytical eyes. That depends on several factors. Right now, you're valuable to me as potential leverage. If Ethan contacts you, I need to know. If he tries to negotiate or make demands, I need to control that conversation. But beyond that, he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. You're also a liability. The Volkovs know I have resources. They'll assume I have you, which means keeping you here creates a certain obligation. What kind of obligation? The kind where your safety becomes my responsibility. If the Volkovs hurt you while you're under my protection, it makes me look weak. I can't allow that. Maya laughed, a bitter, exhausted sound. So I'm a pawn, a piece on a chessboard between you and the Russians. Yes, Teo said simply. But that's better than being dead. The brutal honesty was somehow worse than comforting lies would have been. Maya stared at this man who held her life in his hands and felt a desperate, furious helplessness. I want to see proof, she said, that Ethan actually stole from you. That this isn't just some elaborate scheme to, ransom me or worse. Show me evidence that any of what you're saying is true. Teo regarded her for a long moment, then nodded. Marcus, bring the laptop. Marcus moved to a cabinet and retrieved a sleek computer which he set on the desk and opened. Teo turned the screen toward Maya and clicked through several files. Security footage appeared, black and white, date stamped 6 weeks earlier. A man in a hooded sweatshirt moved through what looked like an office building, clearly knowing where the cameras were and how to avoid them. But in one shot, as he turned toward a door, the hood slipped slightly. Ethan's face appeared for just 3 seconds, but it was unmistakably him. Maya's hands trembled. She watched as the footage switched to another camera angle. Ethan, working on a safe, hidden behind a painting, his movements quick and practiced. Not panicked, not rushed, methodical. Like he'd planned every second. How much of this do you need to see? Teo asked quietly. All of it. He showed her everything. Ethan leaving with a briefcase that hadn't been in his hands when he arrived. Ethan meeting with men in expensive suits in a parking garage, handing over what looked like a small device, the flash drive, probably. Ethan getting into a car and driving away. The final piece of footage was from a restaurant security camera. Ethan sat across from a blonde woman Maya didn't recognize, laughing, relaxed, ordering wine. The timestamp showed 2 weeks ago, a week after he'd supposedly disappeared. Who is she? Maya's voice came out hoarse. We don't know, but clearly Ethan's life hasn't been as difficult as yours. Maya closed her eyes. The nausea returned, but this time it had nothing to do with pregnancy. Ethan hadn't been kidnapped. He hadn't been hurt or lost. He'd stolen money, sold information to criminals, and run away to start over while she'd been sick and terrified and alone. "I need a minute," she whispered. "Take your time." Maya stood on shaking legs and walked to the window, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. The ocean stretched endlessly beyond the cliffs, dark and cold and indifferent. She'd loved Ethan, or she'd loved who she thought he was. 2 years of her life given to a man who'd abandoned her without a second thought. Her hand moved to her stomach automatically. "Not just her," she corrected. "Abandoned us." "Ms. Hart." Teo's voice was closer now. She hadn't heard him move. "I understand this is difficult, but I need to know, did Ethan ever mention plans to leave New York? Places he wanted to visit? People he knew in other cities?" Maya turned to face him. He stood a respectful distance away, hands in his pockets, expression neutral. But she could see the calculation behind his eyes, the way he was measuring her reactions. "No," she said flatly. "He talked about Brooklyn, about saving money for a bigger apartment, about boring, normal things. He never mentioned stealing millions from the Mafia." "Not Mafia," Teo corrected mildly. "We prefer to think of ourselves as business professionals with unconventional methods." "That's not funny." "It wasn't meant to be." He moved back to his desk and pulled out a folder. "I've had my people investigate Ethan's background. Before he met you, he had gambling debts. Significant ones. He'd been threatened twice by loan sharks. The debts were paid off suddenly about 3 months before he started working for me. We're still trying to determine where that money came from." Maya sank back into the chair, her legs unable to support her anymore. "He told me he'd been lucky at poker, that he'd won enough to pay off his student loans." "He lied." "He's been lying for a long time, Ms. Hart. The question is whether he told you anything true that might help us find him now." She tried to think through the fog of betrayal and exhaustion. 2 years of conversations, of lazy Sunday mornings and late-night takeout, and plans for a future that had never been real. What had been genuine? What had been performance? "His mother," Maya said slowly. "He talked about her sometimes. She lived in Philadelphia, I think. They weren't close, but he mentioned her." "We've already checked. She hasn't heard from him in 3 years. Any other family?" Maya shook her head. "He said he didn't have anyone, that it was just him." "Friends? People he trusted?" "Just me." The words tasted bitter. "Or I thought it was just me." Teo closed the folder and leaned back in his chair. "Then we're at an impasse. I can't find Ethan. The Volkovs can't find Ethan. And you, unfortunately, are the only leverage any of us have. So what now? You keep me locked up here indefinitely?" "Not locked up, protected. There's a difference." "Is there? Because from where I'm sitting it feels the same." Teo's expression shifted, something that might have been respect. "You have spirit. That's good. You'll need it." He stood and walked to a different cabinet, returning with a small jewelry box. "I'm going to make you an offer, Ms. Hart. Call it a test of trust." He opened the box. Inside was a delicate platinum pendant, a single diamond surrounded by smaller stones, hanging from a thin chain. It looked expensive. It looked like the kind of thing a man gave to a woman he cared about. Maya looked at it with suspicion. "What is that?" "Insurance. The pendant contains a GPS tracker and a microphone. If you wear it, I can monitor your location and safety. In exchange, I'll give you limited freedom, supervised trips off the property, access to communication under specific conditions, the ability to maintain some semblance of a normal life while we work to resolve this situation." "You want to bug me." "I want to keep you alive. The Volkovs have resources. They have patience. If they find an opportunity to grab you, they will. This ensures I can respond immediately." Maya stared at the pendant. It was beautiful. It was also a leash. "And if I refuse?" "Then you stay here, safe but isolated, until either Ethan surfaces or the Volkovs lose interest, which could be weeks, could be months." Teo's voice remained calm, reasonable. "I'm offering you a choice, Ms. Hart. Limited freedom with monitoring or complete safety with none." It wasn't really a choice. It was the illusion of choice, packaged in platinum and diamonds. But Maya understood the game now. She was a pawn, yes, but a pawn that could still move. "If I wear it," she said slowly. I want real communication privileges. I need to call my job. I need to tell my friend I'm okay. I can't just vanish without anyone knowing. Your job terminated you yesterday for no call, no show. I'm sorry, but I can arrange for you to speak with your friend under controlled conditions. Supervised call, scripted explanation, no details about your location or situation. Maya's hands clenched into fists. She'd lost everything in less than 24 hours. Her apartment's safety, her job, her relationship, her freedom. All because Ethan had decided $2 million was worth more than her life. Fine, she said. I'll wear your tracking collar, but I want something else too. Teo raised an eyebrow. You're negotiating? You said I had choices. I'm making them. Maya met his eyes, refusing to look away. I want information, real information, not filtered through what you think I should know. If you're going to use me as bait or leverage or whatever, I deserve to understand exactly what I'm risking. For the first time since she'd met him, Teo smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his face from coldly handsome to something almost human. I accept your terms. Marcus will brief you on security protocols this afternoon. You'll wear the pendant at all times, and in exchange, I'll keep you informed of developments regarding Ethan and the Volkovs. He took the pendant from the box and held it out. Maya stood and let him fasten the chain around her neck. His fingers were warm against her skin, efficient and impersonal. The pendant settled just below her collarbone, the diamond catching the light. It suits you, Teo said, stepping back. Maya touched the pendant, feeling the weight of it. Surveillance, protection, prison and safety all at once. When can I call my friend? This evening. I'll have Marcus set it up. Teo moved back to his desk, the moment of almost warmth gone as quickly as it had appeared. Rosa will show you the estate. You're free to explore the grounds within the security perimeter. I'd appreciate it if you didn't try to scale the cliffs or swim to Connecticut. That's not funny either. Again, not meant to be. I'll see you at dinner, Ms. Hart. We eat at 7. Dress code is casual. It was a dismissal. Maya left the office with Marcus trailing behind her, the pendant heavy around her neck, her mind spinning with everything she'd learned. Ethan had lied. Ethan had stolen. Ethan had abandoned her to face consequences he'd created. And now she was trapped in a gilded cage, wearing a crime lord's jewelry, carrying a baby whose father was the most hated man on the eastern seaboard. The next 3 days passed in a strange, suspended reality. Rosa showed Maya the estate, 15,000 square feet of luxury perched on 5 acres of clifftop property. The gardens were immaculate, the gym was better equipped than any Maya had seen, and the library held more books than she could read in a lifetime. There was even a small greenhouse where Rosa grew herbs and vegetables. Mr. Castelli believes in self-sufficiency, Rosa explained as they walked through rows of tomatoes and basil, fresh ingredients, less dependence on outside suppliers. Or fewer chances for someone to poison his food, Maya said. Rosa's expression didn't change. That too. Marcus briefed Maya on security protocols with military efficiency. The perimeter was monitored by cameras and guards at all times. The cliffs were genuinely dangerous, 60-foot drops to rocks and churning ocean. The front gate required biometric identification to open. In case of emergency, there were safe rooms on each floor, stocked with supplies. What kind of emergencies? Maya asked. The kind where Mr. Castelli's enemies decide to make a statement. Has that happened before? Twice. Both times everyone in the house survived. The attackers didn't. Maya tried not to think about what that meant. On the 3rd evening, Marcus appeared at her door with a satellite phone. Your supervised call. You have 15 minutes. Your friend Jenna's number is already dialed. Remember the script we discussed. Maya took the phone with shaking hands. The script was simple. She'd left town suddenly for family reasons. She was fine. She'd be back soon. No details, no location, nothing that could endanger Jenna or give the Volkovs a lead. Jenna answered on the first ring. Hello? Jenna, it's me. Maya. Oh my God, where have you been? I've been calling and texting for 3 days. The police said you weren't at your apartment, and your job said you didn't show up, and I thought, I'm fine, Maya interrupted, fighting to keep her voice steady. I'm sorry I scared you. There was a family emergency and I had to leave town quickly. My phone broke and I've been dealing with a lot. Marcus watched from the doorway, his expression unreadable. What family emergency? You don't have family in... Jenna stopped abruptly. Maya, are you okay? You sound weird. I'm fine, just stressed. I can't really explain everything right now, but I promise I'm safe. I'll be back soon. Back from where? What aren't you telling me? Maya closed her eyes, hating every second of this. Jenna was her best friend, the person who'd helped her move into her apartment, who'd held her hair back during bad hangovers, who deserved the truth. I can't say right now. Please just trust me. I'm okay. I'll call again when I can. This is about Ethan, isn't it? Did he come back? Did something happen? The concern in Jenna's voice made Maya's throat tighten. It's complicated. Just, please don't worry. I'll explain everything eventually. Maya, I have to go. I love you. I'll call soon. She ended the call before Jenna could protest further and handed the phone back to Marcus. Her hands were shaking. You did well, Marcus said quietly. Lying to people you care about is never easy. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No, just an observation. That night at dinner, a formal affair in an actual dining room with Teo at the head of the table and Maya seated to his right, she pushed food around her plate and tried not to feel like a guest at her own captivity. You seem troubled, Teo observed, cutting into his perfectly prepared steak. I lied to my best friend. I'm trapped in a house with criminals. I'm pregnant and alone and my entire life has fallen apart in less than a week. Why would I be troubled? Teo set down his knife and fork. Your situation is difficult. I won't pretend otherwise, but you're adapting well. That takes strength. I don't feel strong. Strong people rarely do. It was almost the same thing Rosa had said. Maybe they'd compared notes. Miss Hart, may I ask you something personal? Maya looked up, suspicious. That depends on the question. The baby. Have you decided what you'll do? The question hung in the air between them. Maya's hand moved automatically to her stomach, still flat, no visible sign of the life growing inside. I'm keeping it, she said firmly. Whatever else happens, whatever Ethan did, this baby didn't choose any of this. I won't punish it for his choices. Teo nodded slowly. That's admirable. Foolish, perhaps, given the circumstances. But admirable. You think I think you should do whatever allows you to live with yourself. The world I inhabit doesn't leave much room for moral absolutes, but I respect conviction when I see it. They ate in silence for a while. Maya found herself studying Teo when he wasn't looking, the way he moved with practiced elegance, the way his eyes never stopped analyzing his surroundings, the casual power he wore like a second skin. He was a criminal. He'd admitted as much. He probably hurt people, killed people maybe, but he'd also saved her life, fed her, given her shelter. The cognitive dissonance was exhausting. Tell me something, Maya said suddenly. How did you end up doing what you do? Teo raised an eyebrow. That's quite a question. You offered me information. I'm asking. He considered her for a moment, then set down his wine glass. My father ran this organization before me, his father before him. I was raised to understand power, control, and the price of both. I didn't choose this life so much as inherit it, but I've made it my own. Do you regret it? Regret is a useless emotion. I do what I do efficiently and with minimal unnecessary cruelty. That's as close to virtue as my world allows. That's not an answer. No, Teo agreed. It's not. The pendant felt heavy around Maya's neck. She touched it absently, and Teo noticed. You're adjusting to it well. Most people forget they're wearing it after a few days. I don't think I'll ever forget. Maya met his eyes directly. You're monitoring everything I say and do. How could I forget that? Fair point? Teo stood, dabbing his mouth with a napkin. If you'll excuse me, I have business to attend to. Feel free to use the library or the screening room. Marcus will ensure you have everything you need. He left Maya alone at the enormous table, surrounded by expensive china and crystal, feeling more isolated than she had in her cramped studio apartment. At least there, she'd had the illusion of freedom. The fourth day brought news. Maya was reading in the library, trying to distract herself with a mystery novel where at least the crimes were fictional, when Marcus appeared. Mr. Castelli would like to see you in his office. It's important. Maya's stomach dropped. Important news in this world never seemed to be good news. She followed Marcus through the house, dread building with each step. Teo stood by his window again, but this time his posture was tense. He turned as she entered, and she could see something dangerous in his expression. "Ethan contacted you," he said without preamble. 30 minutes ago, a text was sent to your actual phone, the one you left in your apartment. My people intercepted it. Maya's heart hammered. What did it say? Teo handed her a printout. The message was short, devastating in its casual cruelty. Ethan. Maya, I'm sorry. I made mistakes. I want to explain. Meet me tomorrow, 2 p.m., Cafe Reggio in Manhattan. Come alone. I love you. Maya read it twice, 3 times. Ethan wanted to meet. Ethan wanted to explain. Ethan claimed to love her after everything he'd done. It's a trap, she said quietly. Teo looked surprised. You understand that? I'm not stupid. He knows I'm with you, or at least suspects it. He's using me to negotiate or trade or... She couldn't finish the sentence. The betrayal was too fresh. Correct, but it's also an opportunity. Teo moved to his desk and pulled out a map of Manhattan. Cafe Reggio is public, visible, difficult to ambush. If we control the situation, we can grab Ethan, recover what he stole, and end this. By using me as bait. Yes. Maya looked at the printout again. I love you. 3 words that would have meant everything 5 days ago. Now they just felt like manipulation. What if he's working with the Russians? What if this is their play? It's possible. That's why we'll have extensive security. You'll wear the pendant. You'll be monitored every second. And you'll have Marcus and 3 other operators within 50 feet at all times. And if something goes wrong, Teo's expression hardened, then people will die. But you won't be one of them. That, I promise. Maya walked to the window, staring at the ocean without really seeing it. This was her chance, maybe her only chance, to confront Ethan, to demand answers, to understand how the man she'd loved could have become someone she didn't recognize. I'll do it, she said. But on one condition. What condition? She turned to face Teo. I want 5 minutes alone with him. Before your people move in, before anything happens, I want to look him in the eye and hear him explain himself. I deserve that much. Teo studied her for a long moment. That's dangerous. And potentially foolish. I don't care. Those are my terms. Something shifted in Teo's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition of someone who understood the value of leverage. 5 minutes. But the second I determine you're in danger, my people move. Understood? Understood. Then we have a deal. Tomorrow morning, we leave for Manhattan. Maya nodded, her decision made. Tomorrow she would see Ethan again. Tomorrow she would get answers, or at least closure. Tomorrow, one way or another, this nightmare would start moving toward resolution. She touched the pendant around her neck, her leash, her lifeline, and wondered which version of herself would emerge from that cafe tomorrow afternoon. The woman who'd loved Ethan? Or the woman learning to survive in Valentino Castelli's dangerous world? Maybe both. Maybe neither. Tomorrow would tell. Maya didn't sleep that night. She lay in the enormous bed watching shadows move across the ceiling, her hand resting on her stomach, running through 1,000 different scenarios of what tomorrow might bring. Would Ethan look different? Would he be sorry? Would he even recognize the woman she'd become in the 5 days since her world had shattered? By 4 in the morning, she gave up on sleep entirely and moved to the window seat, watching the pre-dawn darkness gradually surrender to gray light. The ocean below was calmer today, the waves rolling in with steady persistence rather than yesterday's violent crash. Maya envied that steadiness. Nothing about her felt steady anymore. Rosa appeared at 6:30 with breakfast and clothes laid out with military precision. Dark jeans, a fitted black sweater, boots with good traction. Practical clothes for someone who might need to run. Eat, Rosa said firmly, setting down a tray with scrambled eggs and toast. Mr. Castelli says you need your strength today. I'm not hungry. The baby needs food, even if you don't. Eat. Maya ate mechanically, tasting nothing. Rosa watched her with those knowing eyes and finally spoke again. My younger son got mixed up with bad people once. Gambling debts, like your Ethan. I thought I'd raised him better, but sometimes people make terrible choices. She paused, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from the bedspread. When I found out, I was so angry I couldn't see straight, but anger doesn't solve problems. Clear thinking does. Is this a pep talk? This is a reminder that you're smarter than you think. Trust your instincts today. They've kept you alive this far. After Rosa left, Maya dressed carefully, her fingers fumbling with the pendant clasp. The diamond caught the morning light, throwing tiny rainbows across the mirror. She stared at her reflection, dark circles still shadowing her eyes despite the expensive moisturizer Rosa had provided, her face thinner than it had been a week ago, her expression harder. She looked like someone who could survive. She hoped that was true. Marcus knocked at exactly 7:30. The helicopter leaves in 15 minutes. Mr. Castelli is waiting. The flight back to Manhattan felt different in daylight. Maya could see the coastline clearly now, the sprawling estates giving way to industrial areas and eventually to the dense urban grid of the city. She'd lived here for 3 years, but from this height it looked foreign and hostile, a maze where predators hunted and prey tried desperately to survive. Teo sat across from her in the helicopter cabin, reviewing something on a tablet. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Maya's entire former wardrobe, his expression focused and unreadable. When he finally looked up, his gray eyes locked onto hers. We'll land at the same private terminal. 3 vehicles will transport us to a staging area 2 blocks from Cafe Reggio. You'll walk to the cafe at exactly 1:55. Marcus will be at the adjacent table. 2 more of my men will be positioned on the street outside. I'll be monitoring from a vehicle across McDougal Street with full audio and visual. And if Ethan brings people? We've accounted for that possibility. If he arrives with more than one companion, we abort. You order coffee, you leave, we extract you immediately. Maya nodded, her throat tight. And my 5 minutes? You'll have them. But the moment he makes any move that suggests threat, reaching into a pocket, standing too quickly, anything, Marcus will intervene. Your safety is non-negotiable. Even if it means losing Ethan? Teo's expression hardened slightly. Especially then. Ethan has cost me money and reputation. You've cost me nothing and provided cooperation. The math is simple. It should have been disturbing being valued in such transactional terms. Instead, Maya found it oddly comforting. Teo's world operated on clear rules and defined exchanges. There was no pretense of love or loyalty, just calculated interest and mutual benefit. More honest than anything Ethan had ever offered her. They landed smoothly, transferred to waiting SUVs with tinted windows, and drove into the heart of Manhattan. Maya watched the familiar streets scroll past, the bodega where she'd bought coffee every morning, the corner where she'd waited for buses, the whole ordinary geography of her former life. It felt like visiting a museum exhibit of someone else's existence. The staging area turned out to be a high-rise apartment building with a doorman who clearly knew Marcus. They took a service elevator to the 15th floor and entered an empty unit with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the street. Teo immediately moved to the windows, surveying sightlines with professional efficiency. The cafe is 2 blocks south. You'll approach from the north, more witnesses, harder for anyone to grab you without being seen. Cafe Reggio has been in business since 1927. Heavy tourist traffic, multiple exits. Good choice by Ethan, actually. He's thinking about exposure. Or he genuinely wants to talk, Maya said quietly. Doubtful. But we'll know soon enough. Teo checked his watch, a sleek piece of machinery that probably cost more than a car. You have 40 minutes. I want you wired beyond the pendant. Marcus, the mic. Marcus produced what looked like a small black button. This goes inside your bra, left side. It's a directional microphone. Won't pick up street noise, just conversation within 6 feet. Don't touch it, don't adjust it, pretend it doesn't exist. Maya took the device and retreated to the bathroom, her hand shaking slightly as she positioned it according to Marcus's instructions. When she emerged, Teo was speaking quietly into a phone in rapid Italian. He ended the call as she approached. My people have confirmed Ethan made a reservation for 2 at a table by the window. He's planning to be visible, which suggests he either wants witnesses or wants us to see him. Maybe he's just scared, Maya said. Scared people don't steal from organizations like mine. They run and hide and pray we forget about them. Ethan is playing a longer game. Teo moved closer, his expression serious. I need you to understand something, Ms. Hart. Whatever he says to you in that cafe, whatever promises he makes or explanations he offers, none of it matters. He abandoned you pregnant and alone. He stole money that didn't belong to him. He created a situation where Russian criminals want you dead. Those are facts. Don't let sentiment cloud your judgment. I won't. I hope that's true, because the moment you sit down at that table, you become an operative in a very dangerous game. Your performance needs to be flawless. Maya met his eyes, refusing to look away. I understand the stakes, Mr. Castelli. I'm not a child. Something flickered in Teo's expression. Approval, perhaps. No, you're not. Marcus, final equipment check. The next 30 minutes passed in a blur of preparation. Marcus walked Maya through hand signals, explained emergency extraction protocols, and made her repeat the safe word 3 times. The word was Brooklyn, something natural enough to work into conversation, but specific enough that Teo would know immediately if she used it. At 1:50, Marcus handed her a small purse containing her old wallet, some cash, and a phone that looked like her original but was actually a duplicate under Teo's control. Time to go, Marcus said gently. Maya took a deep breath, touched the pendant around her neck one final time, and walked out of the apartment into the hallway. Marcus followed at a discreet distance as they took the elevator down and emerged onto the street. The afternoon was cool and clear, the kind of October day that made New York feel almost manageable. Tourists clustered on corners consulting maps. Students from NYU hurried past with coffee cups and backpacks. The ordinary rhythm of city life continued, oblivious to the fact that somewhere in this crowd, Russians might be watching and crime lords were positioning their pieces. Maya walked south on McDougal Street, her boots clicking against the pavement, her heart hammering so hard she wondered if the microphone would pick it up. She passed the chess shops and vintage clothing stores, the pizza places and wine bars, all the Greenwich Village landmarks that had seemed charming when she'd first moved to the city. Café Reggio appeared ahead, a small corner establishment with its famous antique espresso machine visible through the front window. Maya had been here before, back when she and Ethan were happy, or at least pretending to be. They'd shared tiramisu at one of these marble tables, argued about movies, made plans that would never happen. She paused outside the entrance, gathering herself. Through the window, she could see him. Ethan sat at a table by the window exactly as Teo had predicted, his back to the wall, eyes on the door. He looked thinner than she remembered, his face drawn and pale beneath a baseball cap pulled low. He wore a jacket she didn't recognize and kept his hands on the table where she could see them, empty, non-threatening. He looked terrified. Maya pushed open the door, a small bell chiming her arrival. Ethan's head snapped up, his eyes locking onto hers, and for a moment neither of them moved. Then he stood slowly, his expression crumbling into something that might have been relief or guilt or both. Maya, God, Maya, you came. She crossed the cafe on legs that felt disconnected from her body and sat down across from him without a word. Up close, the changes were more obvious. He'd lost at least 15 pounds. His eyes were bloodshot, with dark circles that rivaled her own. His hands trembled slightly as he reached across the table toward her. She didn't take them. Don't, she said quietly. Just don't. Ethan withdrew his hands, his face collapsing further. I know I have no right to ask anything from you, but I needed to see you. I needed to explain. You have 5 minutes. Explain. A waiter approached, clearly sensing the tension but professionally neutral. Maya ordered coffee she had no intention of drinking. Ethan asked for the same. The waiter retreated, and Ethan leaned forward across the small table. I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I got in over my head and I panicked and I made terrible choices and now everything's falling apart. Start at the beginning, the truth this time. Ethan glanced around the cafe nervously, then back at her. The gambling debts were real. $50,000 to people who don't accept payment plans. They gave me 2 weeks to come up with the money or they'd break both my legs and ruin my hands so I could never work again. When was this? 4 months ago. I was desperate, Maya. I couldn't tell you. You would have tried to help, and I couldn't let you get involved with these people. So I started looking for options. Fast money. Dangerous money. And you found Teo Castelli. Ethan's eyes widened. You know about him? I know everything, Ethan. I've seen the security footage. I know you stole $2 million in a flash drive. I know you sold information to Castelli's competitors. I know you've been lying to me for months. Ethan's face went white. Where have you been? Who told you all this? Maya felt a cold satisfaction at his fear. Does it matter? You left me. You disappeared without a word. What did you think would happen? I thought you'd be safe. I thought if I just vanished, they'd come after me and leave you alone. I never imagined... He stopped abruptly, his eyes focusing on something at her throat. What is that? That necklace, that's not yours. Maya's hand moved unconsciously to the pendant. A gift from someone who actually keeps me safe. Understanding dawned across Ethan's face, followed by pure terror. You're with him. With Castelli. Oh God, Maya, what have you done? What have I done? What have you done? Her voice rose slightly, and she forced it back down, conscious of the microphone, the watching eyes, the careful choreography of this moment. You stole from criminals and ran away, leaving me pregnant and alone to deal with the consequences. Teo Castelli saved my life. The Russians were going to grab me that same night. Did you know that? Did you care? Ethan grabbed her hands across the table before she could pull away, his grip desperate. I cared. I care. That's why I'm here. I have a plan, Maya. I can fix this. I can make this right. How? How could you possibly fix this? The waiter returned with their coffees, the interruption forcing Ethan to release her hands. Maya wrapped her fingers around the warm cup, grateful for something to hold on to. When the waiter left, Ethan leaned in closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. I have the money. All of it, plus what I made from selling the information. Almost $3 million total. And I have leverage, copies of files that implicate people in the Volkov organization, in Castelli's operation, in 2 other families. Enough to bring down everyone if it goes public. Maya stared at him, genuinely shocked. You kept copies? Are you insane? I'm careful. I knew I'd need insurance. And now I do. Ethan's eyes were bright with something that looked like desperation or possibly madness. Here's what we do. You tell Castelli I'm willing to return everything. The money, the original flash drive, all of it. In exchange, he calls off the Russians, guarantees our safety, and lets us disappear. We can go somewhere they'll never find us. Canada, Mexico. Somewhere we can start over. Start over, Maya repeated slowly. With what? With lies? With stolen money? With you looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life, waiting for someone to put a bullet in your head? It's not ideal, but not ideal? Ethan, there's a baby. Your baby, growing inside me right now, and you want to drag it into a life on the run from the mafia? The color drained from Ethan's face again. You're pregnant? 8 weeks. I found out the day you disappeared. I was going to tell you that night. Maya's voice cracked despite her best efforts to stay controlled. I sent you a text, but you were already gone. Ethan's hands shook as he reached for her again. Maya, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. If I'd... What? What would you have done differently? Not stolen the money? Not abandoned me? Or just felt slightly worse about it? I would have taken you with me. I would have protected you both. Like you're protecting me now? By dragging me into a cafe where God knows who might be watching? By using me to negotiate with people who want you dead? Maya leaned back, creating distance. You don't get to play the concerned father now, Ethan. You lost that right. Ethan's expression crumbled completely. Tears actually formed in his eyes, real ones, not the manipulative kind she'd learned to recognize over 2 years. I know I screwed up. I know I'm probably the worst person you could have fallen in love with, but I'm trying to fix it. This plan can work. Castelli's a businessman. He'll take the deal. And the Russians? That's the beauty of it. The files I have implicate them too. If anything happens to us, everything goes public. They can't risk it. Maya studied the man across from her and barely recognized him. Where was the charming graphic designer who'd made her laugh? The man who'd brought her coffee in bed and talked about Brooklyn apartments? This person was a stranger, reckless, desperate, willing to gamble with lives that weren't his to risk. "I need to use the restroom," she said abruptly, standing up. Ethan grabbed her wrist. "Maya, wait, please. Just think about it. Think about what we could have. Let go of me." Something in her voice must have penetrated because he released her immediately. Maya walked toward the back of the cafe, conscious of Marcus's eyes tracking her movement, of Teo listening to every word through the microphone hidden against her skin. She locked herself in the single-stall bathroom and leaned against the sink, staring at her reflection. Her face was pale, her eyes too bright. She looked like someone balanced on the edge of a decision that would define the rest of her life. The question was, which life did she want? She thought about Ethan's plan, running, hiding, always looking over their shoulder, raising a child in fear, moving from place to place, trusting a man who'd already proven he'd sacrifice anything for self-preservation. That was one option. The other option was Teo. A gilded cage, yes, but one with resources and power, protection, safety. A life where her child would never be leverage, never be a pawn in someone else's game. Where she'd be under surveillance, but alive. Maya pulled out the phone Marcus had given her and typed a single word into the Notes app, knowing Teo would see it immediately. Brooklyn, the safe word, the signal, the choice. She deleted it, typed it again, then finally hit send. Her hands were steady. Her mind was clear. She'd made her decision. Maya walked back to the table where Ethan waited, his expression hopeful and desperate. She sat down and looked at him, really looked at him, trying to find any trace of the man she'd thought she loved. "I can't do this," she said quietly. "I can't run with you. I can't trust you. You had your chance to protect me, and you chose yourself. I'm choosing differently." Ethan's face went through several emotions in rapid succession: confusion, understanding, betrayal, and finally cold calculation. "You're working with him, with Castelli. You're going to turn me in. I'm choosing my child's safety over yours. Yes." "Maya, don't do this, please. You don't understand what these people are." "I understand perfectly. I understand that Teo Castelli has kept his word to me. He said he'd keep me safe, and he has. He said he'd give me information, and he has. You said you loved me, and then you vanished. The math is pretty simple." Ethan stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. The few other customers in the cafe looked over briefly, then away. "If you do this, you're making a mistake you can't take back. These people don't just let you walk away when you're done being useful." "Neither do you, apparently." Ethan's expression hardened into something Maya had never seen before. Genuine anger, maybe even hate. "I tried to do this the easy way. I came here offering you a way out. But if you're too stupid to take it..." He reached into his jacket pocket. Marcus was moving before Maya could even process the threat. He crossed the cafe in 3 strides, his hand clamping down on Ethan's wrist before whatever was in that pocket could emerge. Another of Teo's men appeared from somewhere near the counter, blocking the exit. "Don't," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying absolute authority. "Don't make this worse." Ethan froze, his eyes darting between Marcus and Maya. "You set me up. This whole thing was a trap." "You set yourself up," Maya said, standing and backing away from the table. "The moment you stole from people who don't forgive debts." The cafe door opened and Teo walked in, moving with that same controlled elegance Maya had learned to recognize. He surveyed the scene with calm efficiency, then gestured toward the back exit. "Mr. Cross, we have much to discuss. I suggest you come quietly. Causing a scene will only make this unpleasant for everyone, including the nice people trying to enjoy their afternoon coffee." Ethan looked at Maya one final time, his expression a mixture of betrayal and resignation. "I loved you. I really did. I hope you remember that when you're trapped in whatever deal you made with him." "I'll remember that you traded me and our baby to the Russians," Maya said softly. "That's what I'll remember." Ethan's face went white. "What are you talking about?" Teo smiled, a cold, dangerous expression. "Did you really think we didn't know? The driver you hired to take you to the airport, the one waiting in the alley outside. Yuri Volkov's nephew. Did you actually believe trading Maya and your unborn child would buy you safe passage out of the country? Maya felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. What? Teo kept his eyes on Ethan, whose face had lost all color. Show her. Marcus, the surveillance from across the street. Marcus pulled out a tablet and turned the screen toward Maya. Video footage showed the alley behind Cafe Reggio, timestamp showing 10 minutes before she'd arrived. Ethan stood next to a black sedan talking to a man in a leather jacket. The audio was faint but clear enough. Ethan's voice. She'll come out the back exit. I'll make sure of it. You grab her, I get across the border. That was the deal. The man in leather? And if she refuses? Ethan, barely hesitating. Do whatever you need to do. She's your problem once I'm gone. Maya's legs gave out. She sat down hard in the nearest chair, her hand pressed against her mouth. The man she'd loved, the father of her baby, negotiating her kidnapping like she was cargo. Teo moved to stand over Ethan, his voice dropping to something lethal. You were going to feed her to the Volkovs, your pregnant girlfriend, the mother of your child. For what? A plane ticket? Ethan stammered. I didn't. It wasn't. They said they just wanted to talk to her. They would have tortured her for information she doesn't have, then killed her when she couldn't provide it. You knew that. You did it anyway. The cafe had gone completely silent. The barista stood frozen behind the counter. An elderly couple near the window stared openly. This was beyond anything they'd bargained for with their afternoon cappuccinos. Teo made a small gesture, and two more of his men appeared, flanking Ethan. Take him to the vehicle. I'll be out momentarily. They half dragged, half walked Ethan toward the back exit. He didn't fight. He looked like someone who'd finally run out of moves and was just waiting for the inevitable consequences. As he passed Maya's chair, he tried one last time. Maya, I'm sorry. I panicked. I wasn't thinking clearly. Please, get him out of here, Teo said flatly. They disappeared through the back exit, leaving Maya sitting in shock, Teo standing beside her, and a cafe full of witnesses who would probably dine out on this story for years. Teo pulled out his phone and made a brief call in Italian. Then he looked down at Maya, his expression softening slightly. Can you walk? Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. My vehicle is outside. Come. She stood on shaking legs and let Teo guide her toward the front exit, Marcus clearing a path ahead of them. As they emerged onto McDougal Street, Maya saw 3 black SUVs parked illegally at the curb, engines running. The back door of the middle vehicle stood open. Maya climbed in, her mind still replaying that surveillance footage. Ethan's voice, his casual willingness to hand her over, the way he'd barely hesitated before agreeing to let the Volkovs do whatever they needed to do. Teo slid in beside her and the vehicle pulled smoothly into traffic. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Maya stared out the window, watching the city blur past, feeling nothing and everything all at once. Finally, Teo broke the silence. I'm sorry you had to see that, but you needed to know the truth about who he is. How long have you known? About the Russians waiting? Since yesterday. We've been monitoring Volkov communications. When we saw Ethan had made contact with Yuri's nephew, I knew this meeting was more than it appeared. You could have told me. Would you have believed me, or would you have thought I was manipulating you to turn against him? Maya didn't answer because he was right. She wouldn't have believed it. She'd needed to see Ethan's betrayal with her own eyes, hear it in his own words. What happens to him now? She asked quietly. That depends on what he tells us. If he cooperates, returns the money and the files, provides testimony against the Volkovs, he might survive this. If he doesn't, Teo shrugged. Then he becomes an object lesson in what happens when you steal from the wrong people. Will you kill him? Teo looked at her directly, his gray eyes unreadable. Does it matter? Would you mourn him after what he tried to do? Maya thought about it honestly. The Ethan she'd loved was already dead, had maybe never existed at all. What remained was a desperate, selfish stranger who'd been willing to trade her life and their baby's life for a chance at escape. No, she said finally. I wouldn't mourn him. But I don't want to be the reason someone dies, even someone like him. Then I'll take that into consideration. But Maya, he used her first name for the first time, the intimacy of it startling. You understand that after today there's no going back. You chose my protection over his plan. The Volkovs know you're with me. Your old life, your apartment, your job, all of that is gone. You're mine now, for better or worse." The words should have terrified her. Instead, she felt an odd sense of relief. No more pretending, no more illusions, just clear stakes and defined roles. "I understand." They drove in silence back to the private terminal where the helicopter waited. As they boarded and lifted off over the city, Maya watched Manhattan shrink below them one more time. Somewhere down there, Ethan was learning what happened to people who gambled with forces beyond their control. Somewhere down there, the Volkovs were probably regrouping, planning their next move. And somewhere down there was the ghost of her old life. The small apartment, the paralegal job, the ordinary dreams that had died the moment she'd sent that ultrasound to the wrong number. But up here, in this helicopter heading back to the Clifftop estate, Maya Hart made a decision. She wouldn't be a victim. She wouldn't be leverage. She would be whatever she needed to be to protect her child and survive, even if that meant becoming someone she barely recognized. The pendant around her neck caught the afternoon light, throwing diamonds across the helicopter cabin. Maya touched it, feeling its weight, her collar, her protection, her new reality. She rested her other hand on her stomach, where a tiny life grew, oblivious to the deals being made and the choices being forced. "I'll keep you safe," she whispered again, the same promise she'd made that first terrifying night. "Whatever it takes." This time she believed it. The helicopter touched down just as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the ocean in shades of gold and crimson. Maya stepped onto the landing pad with legs that finally felt steady, her mind clearer than it had been in days. The confrontation with Ethan had burned away the last remnants of the woman who'd clutched that ultrasound photo in the rain, hoping for comfort from a man who'd already decided she was expendable. Teo walked beside her toward the main house, his phone already pressed to his ear, conducting business in rapid Italian. Maya caught enough words to understand he was giving orders about Ethan, where to hold him, who should conduct the interrogation, what information they needed to extract. Clinical. Efficient. No emotion wasted on a man who'd proven himself worthless. Rosa met them at the front entrance, her experienced eyes reading Maya's expression immediately. "You look like you could use tea, and something stronger than tea." Just tea," Maya said. "The baby—" "I know, dear. I meant for later, for when you're ready." Rosa guided her inside with a gentle hand on her elbow. "Mr. Castelli, she needs rest. Whatever business you have can wait an hour." Teo ended his call and actually looked slightly chastised. "Of course. Ms. Hart, take whatever time you need. I'll be in my office when you're ready to discuss next steps." Maya nodded and let Rosa lead her upstairs to the bedroom that had become her sanctuary. The older woman brought tea and small sandwiches, then sat in the armchair by the window while Maya curled up on the bed. "Do you want to talk about it?" Rosa asked gently. "He was going to give me to the Russians. Trade me like I was nothing." Maya's voice came out flat, emotionless. The shock still hadn't fully converted to feeling. "I saw the video, heard him agree to it. And the worst part is, I'm not even surprised. Some part of me knew he was capable of it." Rosa was quiet for a moment, sipping her own tea. "My son, the one I told you about with the gambling debts, he stole from me once, took my grandmother's jewelry, and pawned it to pay off part of what he owed. When I confronted him, he cried and apologized and swore he'd never do it again. I believed him because I wanted to." She set down her cup. 2 months later, he emptied my savings account. Sometimes people show you who they are, and we refuse to see it because love makes us stupid. "What did you do when he took your savings?" "I called Mr. Castelli's father. This was 20 years ago before Teo took over. I'd worked for the family for a decade by then. The old man sent people to talk to the loan sharks, and my son's debts were forgiven. But there was a price." Maya looked up. "What price?" "My son had to work for the organization for 5 years. Legitimate work, mostly, driving, deliveries, errands. But he had to earn back what he'd cost me and what it cost them to fix his mistakes. He did it. He's clean now, married, 2 kids of his own. But those 5 years taught him what his mother couldn't, that actions have consequences." "Is that what's going to happen to Ethan? Teo will make him work off his debt?" Rosa's expression darkened. Your Ethan did more than steal money, dear. He betrayed trust at the highest levels. He sold information that could bring down organizations that have stood for generations, and he tried to trade a pregnant woman to people who would have killed her without hesitation. She stood and collected the tea things. Mr. Castelli is many things, but he's not cruel without purpose. Whatever happens to Ethan will be what he's earned. After Rosa left, Maya lay in the fading light, one hand on her stomach, trying to process everything that had happened. The baby was still just a flutter of potential, barely real, yet it had become the axis around which every decision turned. Ethan had seen it as an inconvenience, leverage to be traded. Teo saw it as a complication that demanded protection, and Maya saw it as the only thing in her life that was purely, completely hers to protect. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Marcus's voice came through the door. "Ms. Hart, Mr. Castelli asked me to let you know we've secured the money and the files. Ethan is cooperating. If you're feeling up to it, he'd like to discuss what comes next." Maya sat up, smoothing her clothes. "I'll be down in 5 minutes." She washed her face, braided her hair back, and studied her reflection one final time. The woman looking back at her bore little resemblance to the frightened paralegal who'd stumbled into this nightmare a week ago. This woman had harder eyes, a straighter spine, the kind of posture that said she'd seen the worst and survived it. Teo's office door stood open when she arrived. He sat behind his desk reviewing documents, but looked up immediately as she entered. Something in his expression had shifted since the helicopter, a reassessment, perhaps, or new respect. "Please, sit. Can I offer you anything? Water? Juice?" "I'm fine." Marcus said Ethan is cooperating. More than cooperating. He's singing like a terrified canary. Teo gestured to the papers on his desk. "The money is accounted for, all 2 million of mine, plus approximately 800,000 he made from selling information. The flash drives have been recovered, 3 copies, all encrypted, but my people are working on that. And he's provided details about his contacts with the Volkovs, including names, dates, and transaction records. So it's over? Not quite. The Volkovs still want blood. Ethan embarrassed them by playing both sides. The information he sold to their competitors cost them a significant deal in Philadelphia. They won't simply let that go, even if we return their dignity gift-wrapped." Maya felt cold despite the room's warmth. "What's a dignity gift?" "Compensation for insult. In this case, they'll want either Ethan's life or something of equivalent value." Teo leaned back in his chair. "I've scheduled a meeting with Konstantin Volkov for tomorrow evening. Neutral territory, proper protocols. We'll negotiate a resolution that satisfies everyone's interests. Everyone except Ethan. Ethan forfeited consideration when he decided to play games with forces he didn't understand." Teo's voice was a matter of fact, neither angry nor sympathetic. "But his fate isn't what I wanted to discuss with you." Maya tensed. "What did you want to discuss?" "Your future. You can't return to your old life. We've established that. The Volkovs know you exist, know you were involved with Ethan, know you're carrying his child. Even after we resolve the immediate situation, you'll be a loose end. Loose ends make people nervous. So I'm a prisoner here forever?" "That's one option. Not the one I'd recommend, but possible." Teo stood and moved to the window, looking out at the darkening ocean. "The other option is more complicated. You become part of my household officially, not as a prisoner or a guest, but as someone under permanent protection. It would require certain agreements, certain understandings about boundaries and expectations. But it would also guarantee your safety and your child's safety for as long as you need it." Maya processed this carefully. "You're offering me what exactly? A job? A position?" "I'm offering you a place in a world that doesn't forgive weakness or betrayal. You've already proven you can navigate that world. You kept your head during the cafe meeting, you made the hard choice when it mattered, and you haven't fallen apart despite every reason to do so. Those qualities are valuable. I don't want to be a criminal. I'm not asking you to be. My organization has many legitimate businesses, restaurants, real estate, import-export companies. You're an intelligent woman with legal training. There are positions where those skills would be useful and where you'd be building something rather than destroying it." He turned to face her. "But more than that, I'm offering you protection that goes beyond just housing you in a safe location. I'm offering you the kind of power that means no one will ever use you as leverage again. And in exchange, loyalty, discretion, the understanding that what you see and hear in this house stays in this house, an acceptance that your life is now connected to mine in ways that can't be easily undone. Maya walked to the other window, needing distance to think. Below, she could see security personnel making their rounds, the gardens perfectly maintained, the whole estate functioning like a well-oiled machine. Teo ran his world with precision and control, and he was offering her a place in it. What about when I want to leave? When the baby is older and things are safer? Then we'll discuss it. I'm not in the business of holding people against their will indefinitely, but leaving will require planning, new identities, resources to start over somewhere the Volkovs and their associates can't find you. That's not something that happens overnight. So I trade one cage for another, just a nicer one with better food. Teo's expression hardened slightly. No. You trade vulnerability for security. You trade being alone and hunted for being protected and valued. Don't romanticize your independence, Maya. Your independence is what left you standing in the rain clutching an ultrasound photo with nowhere to turn. What I'm offering is survival with dignity. The brutal honesty cut through her defenses. He was right, and they both knew it. Her old life had been an illusion of safety, one bad decision away from disaster. At least here, the dangers were known and the protections were real. I need time to think about it. You have until tomorrow evening. After the meeting with Volkov, the situation will be resolved one way or another, and we'll need clear terms going forward. Teo returned to his desk. In the meantime, I have something for you. He pulled a folder from a drawer and slid it across the desk. Maya opened it to find legal documents, a lease agreement for a small apartment in Brooklyn, paid through the end of the year. Her apartment, the one she'd shared with Ethan, the one she'd fled from a week ago. I've had your belongings collected and put into storage, Teo explained. The lease is still valid for another 8 months. If you decide to go back, try to reclaim that life. The option exists. I won't stop you. Maya stared at the documents, feeling the weight of the choice before her. That apartment represented everything she'd lost. Her job, her routine, her ordinary dreams. But it also represented the woman who'd been naive enough to trust Ethan, vulnerable enough to be used, powerless enough to need rescue. She closed the folder and pushed it back across the desk. I don't want it. Let the lease expire. That person doesn't exist anymore. Something flickered in Teo's eyes. Approval, perhaps, or recognition. As you wish. Then we'll proceed with the alternative arrangements. Rosa will help you settle in more permanently. We'll discuss the specific terms after tomorrow's meeting. Maya stood, suddenly exhausted. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why are you doing this? Being so accommodating? I'm nothing to you, a complication that fell into your lap because of Ethan's stupidity. Why not just stash me somewhere safe and forget about me? Teo considered the question seriously. Several reasons. Pragmatically, having you visible and under my protection sends a message to the Volkovs and others that I take care of people in my sphere, that loyalty is rewarded, that I'm not careless with those who trust me. It rebuilds reputation that Ethan's theft damaged. And the other reasons? His expression softened almost imperceptibly. You remind me of someone. My mother, actually. She was strong in ways my father never fully appreciated. She raised me to understand that power without honor is just thuggery, and that protecting the vulnerable isn't weakness. It's the whole point of having power in the first place. He paused. And perhaps I've grown tired of dealing only with people who want something from me. You didn't choose this. You're here because you made the only choice available. That kind of honesty is rare in my world. Maya didn't know what to say to that. The idea that this crime lord saw something worthwhile in her, something worth protecting beyond mere utility, was both flattering and terrifying. Thank you, she said finally, for everything. Even the parts that don't feel like kindness. Especially those parts. The truth is the greatest kindness, even when it hurts. Maya left the office and made her way back to her room, her mind churning. Tomorrow would bring a meeting with Russian criminals, negotiations over Ethan's fate, and decisions that would shape the rest of her life. But tonight, she just needed to rest and let her body recover from a week of constant stress. She was asleep within minutes of lying down, her hand resting protectively over her stomach, the pendant still around her neck catching the moonlight that streamed through the windows. The next day passed in careful preparation. Rosa brought clothes more formal than the casual wear Maya had been living in. A charcoal dress that somehow made her look both professional and protected, low heels that allowed for quick movement if needed. Marcus briefed her again on security protocols, though this time the focus was different. "You won't be at the meeting," he explained. "You'll stay here with a full security detail, but you need to understand what's happening in case anything goes wrong." What could go wrong? Marcus's expression was grim. The Volkovs could decide that taking you hostage is worth more than negotiating with Mr. Castelli. It's unlikely. The meeting location is too public, too many witnesses. But we prepare for everything. At 6 o'clock, Maya watched from the library window as Teo emerged from the house dressed in a black suit that probably cost more than her entire year's salary at the law firm. He moved with absolute confidence, flanked by Marcus and 3 other men, and climbed into the lead SUV of a 3-vehicle convoy. Rosa appeared at Maya's elbow. "He'll be fine. He's done this 100 times. Has it ever gone badly? Twice. Once ended in a shootout that made the news. The other ended with a diplomatic resolution and everyone going home alive." Rosa patted her shoulder. "Tonight will be the second kind. Mr. Castelli is very good at what he does." The convoy pulled away, disappearing down the long drive toward the main gate. Maya settled into one of the library's leather chairs and tried to read, but the words blurred together. She kept checking her phone, the one Teo had given her, always monitored but at least functional, for updates that didn't come. 2 hours passed. 3. Rosa brought dinner that Maya barely touched. The security personnel outside the windows changed shifts with quiet efficiency. And still no word. At 9:30, Maya's phone finally buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Meeting concluded successfully. Returning within the hour. All terms satisfied. VC." Maya exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Whatever had happened in that negotiation, Teo had managed it. She put down her book and moved back to the window, watching the dark driveway for headlights. They appeared at exactly 10:15, the same 3-vehicle convoy pulling up to the main entrance. Maya watched Teo emerge from the lead vehicle, speaking briefly with Marcus before heading inside. He looked unharmed, composed, every bit the man in control of his world. A soft knock on the library door announced his arrival. "May I come in?" "It's your house." He smiled slightly at that and entered, loosening his tie. The meeting went well. Better than expected, actually. Konstantin Volkov is a reasonable man when properly motivated. "What was the agreement?" Teo poured himself a drink from the library's bar. Scotch, neat, and settled into the chair across from Maya. "Ethan will stand trial in Volkov's organization's private court. It's not a legal proceeding, obviously, but it has structure and rules. He'll have a chance to plead his case, and the council will determine appropriate punishment. In exchange for allowing this, I retain the recovered money and files, and the Volkovs publicly acknowledged that my security wasn't at fault. Ethan was simply better at deception than anyone anticipated." "And me?" "You were never part of the negotiation. Volkov understands that you're under my protection, that you had no knowledge of Ethan's actions, and that any move against you would be considered an act of aggression against my organization. We shook hands on it. In our world, that's binding." Maya processed this. "What will happen to Ethan in this trial?" "That depends on how well he pleads his case. Best scenario, he works off his debt over many years in whatever capacity they determine. Worst scenario?" Teo didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. "Will I have to testify? See him again?" "No, your part in this is finished. Ethan made his choices and now he lives with the consequences. You're free of him." The words settled over Maya like a weight lifting. Free. She tested the concept, rolling it around in her mind. Free from Ethan's lies. Free from constantly looking over her shoulder for Russians. Free from being leverage in someone else's game. "So what happens now?" she asked. Teo set down his drink and leaned forward, his gray eyes serious. "Now we discuss terms. You've had time to think about my offer. Have you made a decision?" Maya had made her decision the moment she'd pushed that lease agreement back across his desk, but saying it out loud felt final, like stepping through a door that would lock behind her. "I accept. I'll stay, take a position in your organization, be part of your household. Whatever you need me to be to keep my baby safe. Not whatever I need, whatever works for both of us. This isn't servitude, Maya. It's partnership within defined boundaries. He stood and extended his hand. Agreed? Maya stood and shook his hand, feeling the strength in his grip, the certainty. Agreed. Good. Then let's discuss specifics. I have several legitimate businesses that could use someone with legal training and attention to detail. There's a restaurant group that needs help with contracts and licensing, a real estate development company that's expanding into Connecticut, an import business that deals with customs and international trade regulations, all completely legal, all above board, but all requiring discretion about their ultimate ownership. You want me to be a lawyer? I want you to use the skills you have in ways that benefit both of us. You'll be paid well, better than your paralegal salary. You'll have housing here or in the city, your choice. Healthcare, obviously, for you and the baby. Security. And most importantly, you'll have my protection and the protection of my organization. No one touches you without answering to me. It sounded too good to be true, which meant there had to be a catch. What's the real cost? What am I giving up besides my independence? Teo's expression remained serious. Privacy, to some extent. You'll always be monitored for your own safety. Freedom of movement. You can't just disappear without telling me where you're going. And normalcy. Your life will never be ordinary again. You'll be connected to me, to this world, in ways that will limit your future choices. Can I have friends? See Jenna? Yes, but carefully. She can't know details about what you do or where you really live. You'll need a cover story, something plausible. We'll work on that together. And the baby, once it's born, will be protected as thoroughly as you are. Educated, cared for, given every advantage, but also raised understanding certain realities about the world we inhabit. Teo's voice softened. I won't let your child become collateral damage. That I promise you. Maya believed him. Whatever else Teo was, criminal, killer, manipulator, he kept his word. She'd seen it proven again and again over the past week. Okay, I accept all of it. When do we start? Tomorrow. Rosa will help you set up a proper workspace. Marcus will brief you on additional security protocols now that you're permanent staff rather than a protected guest. And I'll have my attorneys draw up employment contracts and the other necessary paperwork. He paused. There's one more thing. What? The pendant. You don't have to wear it anymore if you don't want to. You're not a prisoner or flight risk now. It's your choice. Maya's hand moved to the diamond at her throat, feeling its familiar weight. She'd hated it at first. The reminder of surveillance, of control, of her lack of freedom. But somewhere over the past week it had transformed into something else, a symbol of protection, of belonging to something larger than herself, of being valuable enough to track and guard. I'll keep wearing it, she said. If that's okay. Something warm flickered in Teo's expression. Of course. It suits you anyway. They talked for another hour, working through details and logistics, establishing boundaries and expectations. By the time Maya returned to her room, her permanent room now, she supposed, it was past midnight and exhaustion pulled at her like a physical weight. She changed into the silk pajamas Rosa had provided, washed her face, and studied her reflection one final time. The woman looking back was almost unrecognizable from the terrified paralegal who'd been kidnapped a week ago. This woman had harder eyes, yes, but also more certainty, more strength, more power. Maya climbed into bed and rested both hands on her stomach, feeling the slight firmness that might have been her imagination or might have been the first real sign of the life growing inside her. We're going to be okay, she whispered to her unborn child. We're safe now. We're protected. And no one is ever going to use us as pawns again. The pendant around her neck caught the moonlight, throwing diamonds across the ceiling. Outside, the ocean crashed against the cliffs with eternal persistence. And somewhere in the house, security personnel kept watch, ensuring that the promises Teo had made would be kept. For the first time in a week, Maya fell asleep without fear. She didn't dream of Ethan or Russians or desperate text messages to wrong numbers. She dreamed of a future where her child grew up strong and protected, where she built something meaningful from the ruins of her old life, where survival transformed into something that almost resembled living. And when she woke the next morning to sunshine streaming through the windows and Rosa's gentle knock with breakfast, Maya Hart realized something profound. She wasn't a prisoner anymore. She wasn't a victim. She wasn't leverage or collateral or a complication to be managed. She was a woman who'd made the hardest choice of her life and survived it. Everything else was just details. The morning brought a different kind of clarity, the kind that came from knowing exactly where you stood and what came next. Maya woke to find Rosa had already laid out professional clothes, a subtle shift from the casual wear of the past week. A navy blazer, tailored pants, a cream blouse that managed to be both elegant and practical. The message was clear. Today she began her new life in earnest. She dressed carefully, braided her hair into something that looked competent and controlled, and studied her reflection one final time. The woman looking back could have been any young professional heading to the office, except for the diamond pendant at her throat and the knowledge in her eyes that came from surviving what most people only saw in movies. Marcus was waiting when she emerged, holding a leather portfolio. Mr. Castelli is in a meeting with the restaurant group managers, but he wanted you to have this. Your employment contract, non-disclosure agreements, and the initial project assignments. He suggests you review everything in the library and join him at 11 to discuss questions. Maya took the portfolio, feeling its weight. This is really happening. Yes, ma'am. For what it's worth, you'll do well. I've seen a lot of people try to adapt to this world. Most fail because they can't let go of who they used to be. You've already done the hardest part. You've accepted reality. She wanted to ask what happened to the people who failed to adapt, but decided she didn't need that particular nightmare fuel. Instead, she thanked Marcus and made her way to the library, where morning light streamed through the tall windows and turned the oak furniture golden. The contracts were exactly what Teo had described. Employment with Castelli Holdings LLC, a salary that was triple what she'd made as a paralegal, healthcare benefits that were frankly absurd in their comprehensiveness, and housing options that ranged from suite in the main estate to penthouse apartment in Manhattan. The non-disclosure agreements were thorough, but not unexpected. She would never discuss the true ownership structure of any Castelli business, never reveal the nature of Teo's other activities, never testify against him or any member of his organization in any legal proceeding. The final document was different, a trust fund established in the name of Baby Hart, beneficiary to be updated upon birth. The amount made Maya's hands shake. $5 million, managed by a team of financial advisors, untouchable except for approved expenses related to the child's education, healthcare, and welfare. Even if something happened to Maya, even if she died or disappeared, her child would be provided for. She was still staring at that document when Teo appeared in the doorway at exactly 11 o'clock. "I see you found the trust," he said, moving into the room with that controlled grace she'd come to recognize. "I wanted to ensure your child's future was secure regardless of what happens in our complicated world. This is too much. $5 million is insurance, an investment. That child will grow up knowing they're valued, protected, and given every opportunity. That's worth more than money, but money helps." He settled into the chair across from her. "Have you reviewed everything else? Any concerns?" Maya organized her thoughts. "The housing. I think I should stay here, at least for now. Being in the city while pregnant and alone seems risky, and here I have Rosa and the security and—" She paused, choosing words carefully. "A support system, I guess." "Wise choice. We can revisit after the baby is born if you want more independence. What else?" "The restaurant group project. I understand reviewing contracts and licensing, but I don't have experience in that industry. What if I make mistakes?" Teo's expression softened. "You'll have support. The managers are experienced, and I have attorneys who specialize in this work. Your job is to learn, ask questions, and provide an extra layer of oversight. I value your fresh perspective. You haven't been corrupted by years of doing things the way we've always done them." He leaned back. "Trust yourself, Maya. You're more capable than you realize." She wanted to believe that. She needed to believe it. "Okay. When do I start?" "This afternoon, if you're feeling up to it. The restaurant group holds weekly meetings on Fridays. You'll attend as my representative, take notes, identify any issues that need my attention. Marcus will drive you into the city at 2. The rest of the morning passed in preparation. Rosa helped Maya organize a proper office space in one of the estate's smaller rooms. A desk, computer, filing cabinets, everything she needed to function as Teo's business representative. Marcus briefed her again on security protocols specific to city travel and handed her a new phone. This one is less restricted than what you've been using. You can call and text more freely, but everything is still monitored. For safety, not surveillance. He showed her the emergency contacts. Teo, me, Rosa, and a direct line to our security operations center. Any trouble? You call immediately. At 2 o'clock, Maya found herself in the back of a black SUV heading toward Manhattan, dressed professionally and carrying a leather briefcase that Rosa had pressed into her hands with a knowing smile. The normalcy of it was almost surreal, going to a business meeting, reviewing contracts, taking notes, as if her life hadn't been completely upended just over a week ago. The restaurant group's headquarters occupied the top floor of a building in Soho. Maya rode the elevator up with Marcus at her side, trying to ignore the nervous flutter in her stomach that had nothing to do with morning sickness. The doors opened to reveal a sleek reception area where a woman in her 50s greeted them with professional warmth. "Ms. Hart? We've been expecting you. I'm Diane Chen, General Manager. Mr. Castelli said you'd be joining us going forward." Maya shook her hand, grateful that her palm wasn't sweating. "Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to learning about the operation." The conference room held 6 people, managers from different restaurants in the group, a financial officer, and an attorney who introduced himself as Peter Moretti. They all greeted Maya with the kind of careful respect that suggested Teo had made it very clear she was to be taken seriously. The meeting itself was surprisingly ordinary. Revenue reports, staffing issues, a discussion about expanding into New Jersey, licensing delays at a new location in Brooklyn. Maya took notes, asked clarifying questions, and tried to absorb the complex web of regulations and logistics that kept 6 successful restaurants running. Halfway through, Diane turned to Maya directly. "Ms. Hart, you have legal training, correct? We've been struggling with a landlord at our West Village location. He's claiming we violated lease terms by changing the kitchen ventilation system, but we had engineering reports showing the old system was a fire hazard. Could you review the lease and advise?" Maya's paralegal instincts kicked in immediately. "I'd need to see the original lease, the engineering reports, and any correspondence with the landlord. But generally, safety modifications required by code wouldn't constitute a violation. They'd fall under necessary maintenance. When's the lease up for renewal?" 8 months? Then you have leverage. If the landlord pushes too hard, you can threaten to walk at renewal unless he negotiates. Most landlords prefer reliable tenants over vacant storefronts. Maya paused, realizing everyone was looking at her with approval. "But I'd need to review the specific language to be sure." Peter Moretti smiled. "I like her already. Teo always did have good instincts about people." The meeting continued for another hour, covering everything from health inspection preparations to a potential partnership with a wine distributor. Maya's initial nervousness faded as she realized she actually could contribute here. Her legal training was relevant. Her attention to detail was valuable. And nobody was treating her like a kidnapped victim or a criminal's asset. They were treating her like a professional. When the meeting ended, Diane walked Maya to the elevator. "You did well today. Most people Teo sends to represent him come in acting like they own the place. You actually listened and asked smart questions. The team appreciated that." "Thank you. I wasn't sure what to expect." "Expect us to be professional but also to test you. We're protective of what we've built here, and we need to know you'll respect that." Diane's expression warmed slightly. "But I think you will. You have the right instincts, and if you need anything, advice, resources, someone to grab coffee with who understands this world, I'm available." Maya felt unexpected emotion tighten her throat. She hadn't realized how much she'd needed someone to offer friendship without agenda or judgment. "I appreciate that. Really." The drive back to the estate took 90 minutes through Friday afternoon traffic. Maya spent it reviewing her notes and composing a summary email for Teo, falling into a professional rhythm that felt comfortingly familiar. When they pulled up to the house, she felt something she hadn't experienced in weeks. Satisfaction from work well done. Teo was waiting in his office, reviewing financial reports on multiple monitors. He looked up as she entered and gestured to the chair across from him. How did it go? Maya handed him her typed summary. She'd finished it on her phone during the drive. Better than expected. The team is competent and the operation is well run. There's a lease issue in the West Village that needs legal attention and some concerns about the New Jersey expansion timeline, but nothing critical. Full notes are in the document. Teo scanned her summary, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his usually serious face. This is excellent work. Thorough, well-organized, highlighting the issues that actually matter. Diane texted me during your drive back. She said you were exactly what the team needed. I just took notes and asked questions. You listened, analyzed, and provided value. That's not just anything. He set down the summary. You're going to be very good at this, Maya. I knew you would be. The approval shouldn't have mattered as much as it did, but something in Maya responded to being valued for her competence rather than pitied for her circumstances. This was the beginning of something real, a career, a purpose, a place in the world that she was building rather than falling into. That evening at dinner, Teo brought news that shifted the atmosphere entirely. He set down his wine glass and met Maya's eyes with unusual seriousness. The Volkovs held Ethan's tribunal this afternoon. The verdict came through an hour ago. Maya's fork clattered against her plate. She'd been trying not to think about Ethan, about what was happening to him in whatever dark room the Russians used for their private justice. What did they decide? 10 years of service to their organization, doing whatever work they assign, legitimate and otherwise. He'll be monitored constantly, every movement tracked, every contact screened. If he tries to run or betray them again, the sentence converts to execution. If he completes the 10 years satisfactorily, he'll be released with enough money to start over somewhere far from New York. That's, Maya searched for the right word, harsh, but not death. The Volkovs can be pragmatic when they choose. Ethan has skills they can use, design, technical knowledge, the ability to pass as a civilian. He'll spend the next decade earning back their trust and paying off his debt. It's more mercy than he deserved, honestly. Maya thought about that. 10 years of servitude, constantly watched, never free. It sounded like hell. It also sounded like exactly what Ethan had earned by his choices. Did he ask about me? About the baby? Teo hesitated, which was answer enough. He asked if you were safe. I had one of Volkov's people relay that you were under my protection and no longer his concern. He didn't fight the sentence. I think he understood he was lucky to be alive. Good. Maya meant it. She felt no satisfaction in Ethan's punishment, but no sympathy either. He'd made his choices. Now he would live with them, just as she was living with hers. There's one more thing, Teo continued carefully. The Volkovs wanted confirmation that you weren't carrying any information or leverage that could be used against them. I vouched for you, explained your complete innocence in Ethan's schemes. They've agreed to leave you alone permanently, with one condition. Maya tensed. What condition? That you never attempt to contact Ethan, communicate with him, or involve yourself in his situation in any way. He's dead to you, officially and permanently. Can you accept that? Could she? Maya examined her feelings honestly. The Ethan she'd loved had never existed, just a performance by a desperate man playing at normalcy while planning his escape. The real Ethan had traded her to the Russians without hesitation. What was there to mourn? Yes, she said firmly, I can accept that. He's the father of my baby biologically, but that's where it ends. I don't need him or want him in our lives. Then it's settled. The Volkovs consider the matter closed. Konstantin even sent a message. He respects the way you handled yourself during the cafe meeting. He said you have more steel than most men in his organization. He meant it as a compliment. Maya laughed, a slightly bitter sound. I'm getting compliments from Russian crime lords. My life is so normal now. Normal is overrated. Powerful is better. Teo raised his glass. To new beginnings. Maya touched her water glass to his wine. To survival. To more than survival. To building something worth protecting. The weeks that followed established a rhythm that began to feel almost sustainable. Maya attended the Friday restaurant meetings, reviewed contracts and licensing documents, and slowly learned the intricacies of Teo's legitimate business empire. She proved herself competent and trustworthy, and the team she worked with began treating her as a valued colleague rather than the boss's mysterious representative. Her body changed as the pregnancy progressed. By 12 weeks, the nausea began to fade, and a small but definite bump appeared. Rosa helped her shop for clothes that accommodated her changing shape while maintaining the professional image she'd worked hard to establish. The security team adjusted protocols to account for her condition, and Maya's doctor, a discreet physician who made house calls to the estate, pronounced everything progressing normally. Teo was present but not intrusive, checking in regularly about her work and her health without crossing into territory that felt suffocating. They fell into an easy routine of working dinners where they discussed business challenges and upcoming projects, their relationship evolving into something Maya couldn't quite define. Not employer and employee exactly. Not friends, though there was genuine respect. Something more complicated. Two people who'd been thrown together by circumstances and were making the best of an unusual situation. One evening in late November, Maya was working in her office when Teo knocked on the open door. "Do you have a minute? There's something I'd like to discuss." She saved her document and gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Of course. What's going on?" Teo settled into the chair with uncharacteristic hesitancy. "I've been thinking about the baby, about what happens after it's born. You'll need help. Infant care is demanding, and you'll presumably want to continue working. I'd like to offer a solution." Maya tensed, suddenly wary. What kind of solution? Rosa has a niece, Gabriella. She's a trained pediatric nurse, excellent references, trustworthy. She's looking for a live-in position and would be perfect as the baby's nanny. You'd maintain complete control over parenting decisions, obviously, but you'd have professional support. It was a thoughtful offer, the kind of thing Maya would have needed to figure out eventually. But something about the timing made her suspicious. "That's generous. What aren't you telling me?" Teo smiled slightly. "You're getting better at reading between the lines. The truth is, I've been thinking about the future more broadly. You've proven yourself valuable to the organization. You're smart, capable, and people trust you. I'd like to expand your role, bring you into some of the strategic planning for the business expansion, maybe have you represent me in more complex negotiations. And you're worried I'll say no because of the baby? I'm worried you'll feel torn between being a good mother and being a good employee. I don't want you to have to choose, hence Gabriella." Maya studied him carefully. They'd developed enough of a relationship that she could speak frankly. "You're investing a lot in me. Why? What's the real reason?" Teo was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried unusual vulnerability. "Because you remind me what's possible when someone gets a second chance. Because watching you rebuild yourself has reminded me that this world doesn't have to be only about power and fear. And because," he paused, choosing words carefully, "because I've spent my entire life in a world where everyone wants something from me, and you're the first person in years who just wants to survive and protect someone you love. That's refreshing. That's valuable. And I'd like to help you do more than survive. I'd like to help you actually thrive." The honesty was unexpected and deeply affecting. Maya felt tears prick her eyes, pregnancy hormones probably, but also genuine emotion. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about Gabriella. Say you'll consider taking on more responsibility when you're ready. And say you'll stop questioning whether you deserve the opportunities you're being given. You've earned them." Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. Teo stood and moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, Maya, I'm glad you sent that ultrasound to the wrong number. I'm glad you ended up here. This house has been a fortress for a long time. It's nice having someone in it who's building something rather than just defending territory." After he left, Maya sat in the quiet office, one hand on her growing belly, and let herself feel the full weight of what her life had become. She'd lost everything: her job, her home, her relationship, her illusions about normalcy. But she'd gained something too: safety, purpose, respect, a future where her child would grow up protected and valued. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but maybe it was better than what she'd planned. Maybe necessity had forced her to become someone stronger, someone more capable of handling whatever came next. The months passed with surprising speed. Maya's role in the organization expanded exactly as Teo had suggested. She represented him in negotiations with suppliers and partners, reviewed expansion proposals, and earned a reputation for being fair but exacting. The pregnancy progressed without complications, and Gabriella arrived in late January, a warm, competent woman in her early 30s who immediately bonded with Rosa and made Maya feel confident about the support system forming around her baby. In mid-February, when Maya was 36 weeks pregnant and increasingly uncomfortable, Teo called her into his office with an unusual expression on his face. "I have something to tell you, and I need you to hear me out before you react." Maya lowered herself carefully into a chair, her back aching. "That's an ominous opening. What happened?" "Ethan contacted me through official channels with Volkov oversight. He wanted me to pass along a message to you." Every muscle in Maya's body tensed. "I thought we agreed no contact. That was the condition." "This isn't contact. He sent a message through me with no expectation of response. The Volkovs approved it because it's part of his rehabilitation program, making amends where possible." Teo pulled out a handwritten letter. "I've read it. It's not manipulative, not asking for anything, just an apology. Whether you read it is entirely your choice." Maya stared at the envelope like it was a snake. For months, she'd successfully compartmentalized Ethan, filed him away as a closed chapter, a cautionary tale, someone who no longer had any power to affect her life. Now here he was, reaching across the void she'd built. "What does it say?" "The summary version." Teo's expression softened. "That he's sorry. That he understands he destroyed your trust and nearly got you killed. That he hopes you and the baby are healthy and safe. That he doesn't expect forgiveness but wanted you to know he thinks about the family he lost every day. And that he's grateful you ended up somewhere safe rather than—" He didn't finish the sentence. Maya's hand moved to her belly, feeling the baby kick against her palm. Active today, strong, alive because she'd made hard choices and accepted help from an unexpected source. "I don't want to read it," she said finally. "I believe you about the content, and I appreciate that he's feeling remorse. But I've built something here. I've moved forward, opening that door again, even just to read his words." She shook her head. "It doesn't help anyone. Tell him, through Volkov, through official channels, that I'm glad he's alive and hope he completes his service successfully. But the mother of his child is thriving without him, and that's how it needs to stay." Teo nodded and placed the letter in his desk drawer. "I'll relay the message. And Maya, I think you made the right choice. The past can't be changed. Only the future matters now." 3 weeks later, on a cold March morning when the ocean outside the estate windows churned gray and violent, Maya's water broke while she was reviewing quarterly reports in her office. Rosa appeared seemingly out of nowhere, Gabriella right behind her, both women moving with calm efficiency born of experience. The labor was long, 18 hours that blurred together in waves of pain and exhaustion, and Rosa's steady encouragement. Teo's private doctor handled everything with professional competence. And when Maya screamed that she couldn't do this anymore, that it was too much, Rosa gripped her hand and said firmly, "You've survived worse. You can survive this." And she did. At 4:17 in the morning, as dawn was just beginning to lighten the eastern sky, Maya's daughter entered the world with a furious cry that seemed to announce she had her mother's spirit. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, perfect fingers and toes, dark hair and eyes that would probably change color but for now looked exactly like Maya's. The doctor placed the baby on Maya's chest, and the world contracted to this moment, this tiny, angry, absolutely perfect human that she'd somehow created. "She's beautiful," Rosa whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Absolutely beautiful." Maya couldn't speak, could barely breathe, could only hold this fragile miracle and promise silently that she would protect her with everything she had, everything she'd become, everything she would learn to be. Teo appeared in the doorway an hour later, after Maya had been cleaned up and moved to a recovery room with the baby sleeping in a bassinet beside her bed. He knocked softly and entered when Maya gestured, his expression uncharacteristically uncertain. "I heard it went well. Congratulations." "Thank you. For everything. The doctor, the setup, just everything." He moved closer, looking down at the sleeping infant with something that might have been wonder. "She's perfect. Have you chosen a name?" Maya had been thinking about this for months, testing different options, waiting to see what felt right. Now, looking at her daughter's face, she knew. Sophia, it means wisdom. It means... I want her to be wise enough to make better choices than her parents did, strong enough to protect herself, and brave enough to build the life she wants rather than accepting the one she's given. Sophia, Teo repeated. It's perfect, and she'll have all of those qualities if she has half of your strength. Something passed between them in that moment, an acknowledgement of how far they'd both come from that first terrifying night when Maya had been dragged into his world. She'd been a victim then, a pawn, someone to be protected and monitored and controlled. Now she was a mother, a valued member of his organization, someone who'd earned respect through competence and courage. And looking at her daughter, Maya understood with crystalline clarity that she would do anything, sacrifice anything, to ensure Sophia never had to choose between survival and dignity. I want to make it official, Maya said suddenly. The protection, the agreement, all of it, legal documents, formal contracts, whatever makes it binding. I want Sophia's future guaranteed regardless of what happens to me. Teo nodded seriously. I'll have the attorneys draw everything up. Full trust provisions, guardianship arrangements if anything happens to you, education funds, healthcare, all of it ironclad. He paused. And Maya? Nothing is going to happen to you. I promise to keep you safe, and I keep my promises. I know, but I'm a mother now. I need more than promises. I need certainty. You'll have it. The weeks after Sophia's birth passed in an exhausted blur of late-night feedings and diaper changes and the strange, overwhelming love that came from being responsible for another human's existence. Gabriella proved invaluable, helping Maya navigate the early challenges while never overstepping. Rosa spoiled Sophia shamelessly, knitting endless tiny sweaters and singing Italian lullabies. And Teo surprisingly became a regular presence, stopping by to check on them, bringing age-appropriate toys he'd clearly researched, once even taking a 2 a.m. feeding shift when Maya was too exhausted to function. By Sophia's 2-month birthday, Maya had established a new rhythm. She worked part-time from home, attended the most critical meetings virtually, and slowly rebuilt her professional identity around her new role as a mother. The organization adapted, creating systems that allowed her to contribute without sacrificing time with Sophia. One evening in late May, when Sophia was sleeping peacefully and Maya was enjoying a rare moment of quiet on the estate's terrace, Teo joined her with 2 glasses of wine. I can't drink, Maya reminded him. Still nursing. 1 glass won't hurt after this much time, and you've earned it. Today marked your first successful negotiation of the New Jersey lease terms. The team is thrilled. Maya accepted the glass and took a small sip, savoring the taste of something she'd denied herself for nearly a year. It feels good to be useful again, to be more than just Sophia's mom, as much as I love being that. You were always more than one thing. That's what makes you valuable. Teo settled into the chair beside her, looking out at the ocean that had become the backdrop to Maya's transformed life. I have something to ask you, and I want you to know you can say no without any consequences to your position or Sophia's security. Maya tensed slightly. What is it? I'm expanding into Connecticut. Hotel properties, some commercial real estate. It's a significant investment, and I need someone I trust completely to oversee the legal and regulatory side. The position would require more travel, longer hours, significantly more responsibility, but also significantly more compensation and equity in the properties. You'd be a partner, essentially, rather than just an employee. Maya's mind raced. This was huge. A real position of power, not just coordinated work, but actual authority. The kind of opportunity that could set her up for genuine financial independence, could give Sophia a future that wasn't dependent on Teo's continued protection. What about Sophia? I can't just abandon her for business trips. Gabriella would travel with you when needed, or we could arrange for you to work primarily from here and the team travels to you. We'd make it work around your needs as a mother. This is an opportunity, Maya, not an obligation. She thought about the woman she'd been 8 months ago, terrified, pregnant, alone, being dragged into a helicopter without choices or power. Then she thought about who she'd become. Strong, competent, respected. A mother raising her daughter in safety and comfort. I want equity provisions for Sophia, too. If I'm taking this risk, I want her future secured beyond just the trust fund. I want her to inherit something I built, not just what you've provided. Teo smiled. Done. I'll have the attorneys include provisions that transfer your equity to her if anything happens to you. Anything else? Decision-making authority on the Connecticut projects. Not just advice, actual authority to approve or reject deals based on my legal and financial analysis. Agreed. And one more thing. Maya met his eyes directly. I want to know the truth about all of it, the legitimate businesses and the ones that aren't. I can't represent you effectively if I only know half the picture. I need to understand the full scope of what I'm protecting Sophia from and what I'm building her future on. This request clearly surprised him. Teo set down his wine and studied her carefully. That's dangerous knowledge. There are things I do that you might not be able to accept, even after everything you've seen. I'm not asking you to make me complicit. I'm asking you to trust me with the truth. I've proven I can keep my mouth shut. I've proven I understand discretion. What I haven't proven yet is that I can make truly informed decisions, because you've been protecting me from the worst of it. I don't want that protection anymore. I want clarity. Teo was quiet for a long time, the ocean waves providing a rhythmic backdrop to their silence. Finally, he nodded. All right, tomorrow evening, after Sophia goes down for the night, come to my office. I'll show you the full picture. The businesses, the money flows, the relationships with people like Volkov and others. All of it. And then you can decide if you still want the Connecticut partnership. I will. Because understanding the darkness doesn't mean I'm afraid of it. It means I'm smart enough to know what I'm navigating. That conversation marked another transformation. The next evening, Teo showed Maya the reality of his empire. The money laundering operations hidden within legitimate businesses, the political connections maintained through carefully structured bribes, the enforcement mechanisms that kept everyone in line. He didn't sugarcoat or justify. He simply presented the facts and let her process them. Maya listened, asked questions, and realized something crucial. She wasn't shocked. Maybe she should have been, but months of living in this world had already taught her how power really worked. The only difference now was having the details confirmed rather than guessed at. Can I ask you something? She said when he'd finished. Why this life? You said you inherited the organization, but you're smart enough to have gone legitimate completely, built something clean. Why didn't you? Teo poured himself another drink, his expression thoughtful. Because the world doesn't actually work the way legitimate business pretends it does. Power protects power. Money flows to money. And the people at the top of the so-called legitimate world are often more corrupt than people like me. They just have better PR. At least I'm honest about what I am. And what are you? Someone who understands that survival requires strength, that protection has a price, and that the rules everyone pretends to follow are really just suggestions for people without power to enforce their will. He looked at her directly. I'm also someone who keeps my promises, protects people who trust me, and builds something worth passing on. That matters more than whether society approves of my methods. Maya absorbed this. She didn't agree with everything Teo did, but she understood him, and she respected the consistency between his words and actions. That was more than she could say for most people she'd known in her old life. I still want the Connecticut partnership, she said, but I want it structured so that Sophia inherits clean equity only, the legitimate properties, not anything connected to the other operations. Can you do that? Yes. It'll require some creative legal structure, but yes. Then we have a deal. They shook hands, and Maya felt another piece of her new identity click into place. She wasn't naive anymore. She wasn't a victim or a guest or someone who needed constant protection from reality. She was a partner, a mother, a woman who understood exactly what world she was operating in and had made peace with the compromises required to thrive in it. The summer passed in focused work. Maya threw herself into the Connecticut project, proving herself capable of managing complex negotiations and million-dollar decisions. She traveled when necessary, always with Gabriella and Sophia, always with security, but increasingly with confidence that she could handle whatever situations arose. Sophia grew from a tiny newborn to a chubby, alert infant who smiled at Rosa and reached for shiny objects and seemed to recognize Maya's voice above all others. Watching her daughter develop, Maya felt profound gratitude that Sophia would never know the fear and vulnerability that had defined the early weeks of her existence. This baby would grow up protected, educated, given every advantage. And she would grow up knowing her mother was strong. That mattered more than anything else. One evening in late August, when Sophia was 5 months old and Maya had just successfully closed a major hotel acquisition in Hartford, Teo requested her presence in his office. She found him standing by the window as usual, but his posture was different, less controlled, more contemplative. "The Volkov situation has reached its conclusion," he said without preamble. "Ethan completed 6 months of service with exemplary performance. Konstantin was so impressed he's reduced the sentence to 7 years instead of 10. Thought you'd want to know." Maya felt nothing beyond mild interest. Ethan had become an abstract concept, the biological father of her child, yes, but no longer a person with any real impact on her life. "I hope he does well, genuinely, but it doesn't change anything for us." "I know. I just wanted you to have closure if that's something you needed. I closed that chapter months ago. The only thing that matters now is building Sophia's future and proving I can handle the Connecticut expansion." Maya paused, then decided to be completely honest. "And figuring out what my long-term life looks like. I can't live in your house forever, dependent on your protection. Eventually, Sophia will have questions about why we live like this, why there are guards and security cameras, why her mother works for a man who cares about both of you and wants you to succeed," Teo interrupted gently. "Maya, you're not dependent. You're employed. You're a partner. And when you're ready to have your own place, we'll make that happen with security arrangements that keep you both safe. But there's no rush. You're welcome here as long as you want to stay." "What if I want to stay but also want independence? What if I want Sophia to grow up here but also want my own life separate from yours?" The questions tumbled out before Maya could stop them. "I'm grateful for everything you've done, but I also need to know I'm building something that's mine, not just borrowing space in your world." Teo turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "Then we formalize it differently. The Connecticut partnership gives you equity and income independent of me. We create a legal structure where you have ownership stake in the property Sophia lives in, make it truly yours, not just provided by me. We establish clear boundaries about your work and your personal life. Whatever you need to feel like you're in control of your own future." "Why are you being so reasonable about this?" "Because I've spent my entire life watching people fight over control and power, and it's exhausting. You've proven yourself trustworthy and valuable. Why would I make that complicated by trying to control you? I'd rather invest in your success and benefit from having a genuine partner rather than a dependent." Maya felt tears threaten, happy ones this time. "You know what's weird? I think I actually trust you more than I ever trusted Ethan. At least you're honest about the transactional nature of everything. Trust built on honesty lasts longer than trust built on illusions." Teo smiled slightly. "Though I'd like to think we've moved beyond purely transactional at this point. You're not just an employee, Maya. You're—" He paused, searching for words. "Your family, I suppose. Not in a romantic way, not in a traditional way, but in the way that matters. Someone I care about succeeding, someone I'll protect because I value them, not because I own them." The word family settled around Maya like a warm blanket. She'd lost her biological family years ago. Parents dead in a car accident, no siblings, no extended relatives who'd stayed in touch. For so long, she'd tried to build family with Ethan, only to discover it had been a performance. But here, in this strange household with a crime lord and his housekeeper and security team and infant daughter, Maya had found something that felt remarkably like family. Complicated, unconventional, built on unusual foundations, but real. "Thank you," she said softly. "For all of it. For saving me that first night, for giving me opportunities, for helping me become someone stronger than I knew I could be, and for helping me give Sophia a future worth having. Thank you for letting me be part of it. This house was very empty before you arrived." They stood together by the window as the sun set over the Atlantic, two people who'd been thrown together by chaos and had somehow built something meaningful from it. Below, Maya could hear Rosa singing to Sophia in Italian, the baby's delighted squeals carrying up through the open windows. Her daughter, her family, her future. All of it hard-won. All of it built on difficult choices and pragmatic compromises, but undeniably real. Maya rested her hand against the pendant she still wore every day. No longer a tracker of surveillance, just a symbol of belonging to something larger than herself. She'd come so far from that terrified woman in the rain, clutching an ultrasound and hoping for comfort from someone who'd already abandoned her. Now she stood in a mansion on a cliff, a successful businesswoman and devoted mother, protected and valued and building equity in a future she controlled. The path here had been dark and terrifying, but the destination was worth every difficult step. "I should get back to Sophia," Maya said, breaking the comfortable silence. "It's almost her bedtime." "Of course. We'll finalize the Connecticut paperwork next week?" "Yes." "And Teo?" She turned at the door. "I'm glad I sent that ultrasound to the wrong number. I'm glad I got in that SUV. I'm glad I ended up here instead of—" She didn't finish the sentence. They both knew how differently this story could have ended. Teo's expression softened. "So am I. Sweet dreams, Maya. Tell Sophia good night from her Uncle Teo." Uncle Teo. The title fit perfectly. Maya climbed the stairs to the nursery where Rosa was just finishing the bedtime routine, her daughter's dark eyes already drooping with sleep. She scooped Sophia into her arms, breathing in that perfect baby smell, feeling the absolute trust in the way her daughter relaxed against her chest. "Your Uncle Teo says good night," Maya whispered. "And your mom says you're going to have an amazing life. The very best life. I promise you that, sweet girl. You'll never be anyone's pawn. You'll never be leverage. You'll be powerful and protected and loved. That's my gift to you." Sophia made a small content noise and drifted off to sleep in her mother's arms. Maya stood there holding her, looking out the nursery window at the estate that had become their sanctuary, and felt something she hadn't experienced in longer than she could remember. Peace. Not the absence of danger. She understood now that danger was always present, but the confidence that she could handle whatever came next, that she'd built something strong enough to weather any storm, that she was no longer the woman who needed rescuing. She was the woman who would do the rescuing if anyone threatened her family, and that was worth more than any fairy tale ending could have provided. Outside, the ocean crashed against the cliffs with eternal persistence. Inside, a mother held her daughter close and whispered promises she had every intention of keeping. This was her life now. Complicated, unconventional, built on foundations most people would never understand, but it was hers, and she'd fought for every inch of it. That made it perfect.